Record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Figueroa Villa, McLean Hill, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum. Mr. Executive Director.
Mr. President, we have three items to be removed from the agenda. Item 1 is continued to August 8th, 2017. Item 2D, as in David, is continued to August 8th at the department's request. And item 3E is continued to August 8th at the department's request.
I'm sorry, that was, what was the first item?
The first item is number 1, election of officers.
1, 2D, and
2D, 3E.
3E. Okay, thank you. We're going to, as we have a extensive agenda today because we were off for 3 weeks, and we have 2 officer-involved shooting cases to be determined in closed session today, and that have generated a large amount of media attention, and I know that at least the family members for one of the involved individuals is here today. So out of respect for the families, I am going to change the agenda order today. So we will do consent agenda items first, and then we will go to item 6A, 1 and 2, and we will entertain public comment on those 2 items, and then we will break into closed session to determine those 2 matters, and then come back for the rest of the agenda, which will be the regular agenda items, the report of the Chief of Police, and then full public comment. So do I have a motion to approve item? Do we have any comment on the consent?
We have none, sir.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion to approve items 2A, B, C, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, and W? Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, the motion moves. So now we'll go to item 6A1.
And I have yet to receive any comment cards.
I believe there, okay. Well, we will.
And there's a whole bunch of people waiting to speak on it that are still outside.
We will take the speakers as they come in.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Mr. President, if I may suggest, we could take regular agenda items that generally do not
Sure.
require a report, which would be F and G on the report, I'm sorry, on the agenda.
Yes. Do we have any comment on items 3F or 3G?
No, sir.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve items 3F and 3G? Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. I don't believe we need a report on item 3D either. Does anybody want to report on item 3D? Do I have a motion to approve item 3D? And a second? Second. All in favor?
No comment cards.
Okay, thank you.
Ask. And there are no comment cards on that item, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Are we getting cards in on item 6?
None yet, sir.
So again, we're going to start with item 6A 1 and 2, if you'd like to speak
Okay.
on either of those items.
I do have some cards now for 6A1.
Okay.
Let me see. This is regarding OIS number 053-16, and we have Carlos Montes, followed by J.C. Jesus, Teresa Dominguez, and Humberto Huizar.
If your name's been called, please come up to the microphone and speak. Can you read the names one more time?
Carlos Montes, J.C. Jesus, Teresa Dominguez,
Yes,
and
good
Humberto
morning.
Huizar.
My name is Carlos Montes. I'm a member of the Bow Heights Community Service Organization. I'm an organizer in the community. I'm also a member of the Bow Heights Neighborhood Council. I've been there for 4 years. I'm here to speak on the item that you announced regarding the Jesse Romero case. I've been here many times before. All I would ask you to do is to look at other evidence, other videos that maybe Chief Beck or LAPD have not provided, okay? I was here when you announced the report on the Jose Mendez case, and I was totally flabbergasted. Because in that case, there was the clear evidence in video that totally contradicted the police version, where Jose Mendez was in his car with seatbelt on and shot and then cut out and dragged down the hill. Now, you did not see that video evidently, so I had asked you in the Jesse Romero case, there is a video that contradicts the police version. Please look at the video. There's other witnesses that contradict the police version. Of course, there's going to be witnesses and statement by the police corroborating their version. But please, do not come back and say, Chief Beck, the police give this version, we believe it, it's a justified killing. It is not. And we are tired. There's been over 6 killings in Hollenbach Police Division. There's a problem at the Hollenbach Police Department. There's a nest of assassins there. I live in Bow Heights. 1 or 2 killings a year, now 6 or 7. There's another young man, Pedro Echeverria, shot by Carvajal. Carvajal is the same guy that's going around harassing the other young guys. He just arrested someone else. You got to clean up that nest of assassins. The community is sick and tired. You can go do all your immigration work, fine. But it's against the law to kill young, innocent Mexican-American youth. It's a human rights violation. We're sick and tired of it. You got to stop it. It's your job.
Fire Chief Beck.
Prosecute the cops. Clean up Hollenbach Division. We're sick and tired of it. There's many youth in our community that don't believe in coming here and fighting for what we're doing. We're still willing to fight and demand justice. But if you continue to cover up the killings like you did Jose Mendez, Beck, you're going to have to face other alternatives from the community.
Thank you. The next speaker, J.C. Jesus. I'm sorry, I can't read the last name. Followed by Teresa Dominguez. Humberto Huizar, too.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Commission members, and good morning, Chief. It's a pleasure to be here before you all. I hope you give it the total, I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. I hope you take the totality of the circumstances, really, and like Mr. Montes was saying, the totality would include outside sources of information to come up with whatever you do. I'm not here as an attorney to argue the case and argue the facts or any of that stuff. I have one particular concern that I've seen that's been a repeated theme with these shooting cases. It doesn't necessarily apply here to the LAPD, but I see it everywhere where they mentioned to the press. I don't know what the public relations process is here, but immediately the officers in charge of reporting what happened will always say, this is a documented gang member that was shot and killed and it's still being investigated. In my view, the statement documented gang member without a judicial determination is a dehumanization, the degradation of a human being. My understanding of the code section requires evidence to prove that a person to be identified as a gang member, you need to establish that the person committed an act, criminal act, for the benefit, at the direction, and association of a gang, 3 or more members. So to say that someone's a documented gang member, that's a conclusion, not only a legal conclusion, it's a legal conclusion, it's a conclusion of fact. It's 2 conclusions. And it's unfair without a judicial determination. And what it does, and I understand why you do it, it brings down the public outcry. Because when you have a 14-year-old kid that's running, and granted he has a gun, and he throws it, we don't know all the details yet. Well, I look forward to seeing all the details. But when we know the gun landed on the other side of the fence, that cannot be disputed. And we have officers saying they aimed the gun, but the focus is to say the person is a documented gang member, focuses the attention on the dehumanization, degradation process. And I've come up with a new theory of what that is in today's society. That's called a Trumpism. What we see in our government, continuing statements to degrade our community. And that has to stop. All we ask for is an objective report. A person ran with a gun, we don't know if he's a gang member yet, things like that. But to say he's a documented gang member, who knows why the officer said that? Maybe he was standing in the corner with one of his friends, Sleepy from the neighborhood that he knew or something. Maybe the guy was a gang member that he was standing next to, and the officers put down on their field identification cards, the person's a gang member. And use that information to document or report a police shooting case all the time. And I'm sure you see all the reports that come in, documented gang member, and there's never any adjudicated facts that really prove that. And you're left as a commission to look at that and say, oh, this is a documented gang member. And automatically it sways the evaluation.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
J.C. Jesus. Teresa Dominguez.
Mi nombre es Jesse Romero.
Are we going to get a little bit more time? Because I'm
Sure.
going to do a brief
You get a
translation.
Sure.
Okay.
Twice as much time.
Mi nombre es Teresa Domínguez.
My name is Teresa Dominguez, and Mr. Romero said my name is Jesus Romero. Arrímese un poquito.
Okay. Estamos aquí para pedir justicia por Jesse Romero, que fue baleado el mes 8-9 del 2016.
Okay.
Queremos videos que sean verdaderos, no mentiras, porque es un niño de 14 años que fue baleado por un policía.
We're here to demand justice for Jesse Romero, my son. We're also here to demand the truth, that the videos be released, and that the videos be obtained by you all so that you could see the truth.
¿Cuál fue la justificación que hayan matado un niño menor de 14 años?
What was the justification
Diciendo que
for
era un
killing a
ganguero. ¿Por qué?
for killing a 14-year-old young man who they accused of being a so-called gang member? Why?
Él era un buen estudiante que estaba estudiando en la escuela Méndez. No es justo que hayan matado a mi hijo menor de edad sin justificación.
He was a good student attending Mendez High School. There's no reason to justify why they killed my son, Jesse.
Quiero justicia para mi hijo, por favor, y que enseñen el verdadero video, no mentiras.
I want justice for my son, please, and to show the real video for my son. Es todo.
Es todo, gracias.
This is all. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, and we're very sorry for your loss.
The next 4 speakers, Ms. De Jesus, Akili, Paula Miner, and Pastor Q.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ms. De Jesus, and I'm here this morning to address Officer Mario Cardona attacking my son, Daniel Garza. He was
I'm sorry, ma'am. We're on item 6A1, which is the officer-involved shooting.
So this is for public comment?
No, public comment will come later, but this item right now is related to the
Shootings only?
shootings only.
Okay, I'll talk
you.
Akili,
11 years ago, we were in a room very much like this for a young man named Devin Brown, who was killed by the police. He was 13 years old, and the police shot in his car 10 times. 7 bullets hit this child. Devin Brown was Los Angeles' Emmett Till. We are back today because our police still continue to kill our children. You heard the cries of a mother. And we know, we can read the response that's coming back. We are sorry for the loss. It was tragic. But after lengthy investigations, after lengthy, comprehensive, and in-depth investigations, we found the police to be in policy. Because killing children is in policy. Unfortunately, these children were not white. Unfortunately, these children were not a white woman, because had they been that, he would be fired by now, according to the pattern. So we are here to raise our voices in protest and demand justice. We have to be here. If we are not here, they will decide in silence and go about their business. We must be here to raise our voices and say, shame, 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 because we know what they're about to do. And we need to raise our fist and say, hell no! Hell no! Hell no! Shame! 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 And if I've gone over my 2 minutes and y'all gonna arrest me, I got my hat and notebook in my hand. All right.
My name is Paula Miner, a member of Black Lives Matter. I stand for the names of 2 teenagers whose murders by LAPD are being considered today. That is Jesse Romero, age 14, and Kenny Watkins, age 18. Today we had a press conference and we're talking about the history of brutality and violence against children that started with our research back in 1976 with the Explorer program and then gone on to the Cadet program. LAPD has shown a pattern for being ready to abuse and brutalize and murder teenagers. Last year, according to the statistics, 6 youth under the age of 18 were shot by LAPD. We're finding that what happens is an action occurs first by the PD. Then the next step is to dehumanize the victim, to try to pretend that they are a gang member or they're doing this or doing that, despite whatever facts, video may exist. And then the last thing they do is create the rationale. So I stand and I raise the names of Jesse Romero, Kenny Watkins, and ask that this commission rethink how you've been responding and rubber stamping in the past. Look at these situations. We have got to stop killing black and brown youth. This is what we're calling for today, and this is what we stand for. So I say his name, Jesse Romero. Jesse Romero. Say his name, Jesse Romero. Jesse Romero. Say his name, Kenny Watkins. Kenny Watkins. Say his name, Kenny Watkins. Kenny Watkins. And Chief Beck, shame, shame. You are the leader of this culture. You continue to breed this culture. It is very, very shameful and destructive.
The next speaker, Pastor Q, followed by Nia Mina, and Audrey George.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I miss the days when we had records that were made out of wax. You put them on the needle and they were damaged, they would just keep playing the same song over and over again. But it wasn't smooth. There was roughness to the sounds. Once again, I'm hearing, we want to see the video. I'm hearing another family demanding to see the video. Why? They don't trust the police. And the fact that the police always want to keep the video, it lets us know we cannot trust the police. If the individual is guilty, show the video. But there's always a reason why you will not show the video. And we spent close to $60 million on body cams. We have no youth department, but we spent $60 million on body cam. We keep building this war machine. We keep building this police machine, and we have no youth programs. We keep complaining about gangs. If I get shot by a police officer today, when I go home, if I get shot by a police officer today, all they have to say is that I was a gang member. That's right. And that will automatically, because what we're doing is we're playing for the dominant culture. We're saying to the dominant culture that those people who, black and brown people, are violent. Right. That's why Trump can get on there and say the things he said. Black and brown people are violent. So whatever they tell you, don't listen to them, listen to us.
Good morning.
It's not a good morning, and I think that's something that you all don't seem to understand. The families here expressing the demand for justice and the demand for the release of videos, and it's not a good morning. See, this is you protecting officers and not the victims. This is you expressing lack of concern for the victims and their families. This is you showing your true colors once again. And the community is here to watch. The community is watching on Facebook Live right now. The community is watching every time you make an action like this and do not respond in the way that is necessary so that these abuses and patterns do not continue. I think that's something that you're missing, that we are asking you to stop. Because how many more youth, Jesse Romero, Kenny Watkins, and even this 15-year-old cadet, how many more youth have to be abused and killed before you see that this is wrong? You don't want to go down in history with this attached to your name. I know you don't. I know you don't. Youth that are living are watching. The next generation is watching. We stand with the family for the demand of the video. Chief Beck, 6 young people have been killed, 14 to 18. Under your watch. Under your watch. Assaulting the youth, this has to stop. You have to stop refusing to acknowledge the harm done by your officers and to learn from the previous abuses. You cannot be trusted with community youth. We see that. You cannot be trusted as mentors. We see that. You cannot be trusted as supervisors and as chief of police. We see that. Let Minneapolis show you an example. Resign or be fired. This is not personal. This is what it is. People are dying. These are the facts. If I'm me to appeal to your rationale, that's what it is. Step up and do your job or leave.
The next speaker, Audrey George, followed by Michael Williams, Natasha Jones, and Melina Abdullah.
When you go into closed session, remember that Jesse Romero and Kenny Watkins were murdered. They were murdered because the police that shot at them did not see them as humans, saw them as criminals. A huge part of that is your damn gang database, which presents so many thousands of children as potential criminals. And the fact that one of the cops who shot I believe Jesse Romero, it was his second shooting in 12 days. What does that say? What does that say about the humanity of this police force? And then they follow this typical pattern of the only way they can deal with it is to criminalize these people after they're shot. These young people, they're criminalized by press accounts that will never be backed up by actual video about guns, whether they're wielding them or throwing them away. Those kids will never have a day in court. They will never be able to prove their innocence. Kenny Watkins, it was a traffic stop. Why was he killed? What was the stop even of any value, of importance, that it would result in his murder? And then Jesse Romero and Kenny, probably both. Look at how long it took for them to get medical attention after these shootings. Look at that record. Is that even in the police report? Please surprise us. Just show your humanity and that you're really, really caring about the youth of this city, the black and brown youth who are murdered every day.
Michael Williams.
I haven't even talked yet, so I don't know why I'm at like 10 seconds behind. Okay. First of all, I want to say that the meaning of Jesse Romero's name is a beautiful meaning. It means gift. Jesse was a gift to his community. That's what he was. That's what his mother gave him. When his mother gave him that name, spiritually she was inclined because she knew that he was a gift. You guys took that gift away from that community. The LAPD took that gift away from that community. You rob us of our youth before. I think all the time about all the young men and what they would have became if they were able to live long enough to do something. But you take those children away from us. You take those children away from us. And you guys say 6. And you guys look at 6 and you say, well, that's the cost of doing business. You don't see nothing wrong with that. That's the problem, is that when you hear the numbers of people that you kill, you think that's decent. That's a good amount of people. You don't see what you're robbing the community of. You guys, there's another video that needs to be released that hasn't been shown. You released video on Carnell Snell trying to incriminate him. But you will not release video of people being murdered to the families of people. Charlie Beck. You can release videos to incriminate someone, but you can't release videos that are going to put the minds at ease of loved ones that have lost their loved ones to your police department. That's not possible. You're hypocritical, and you obviously don't know how to do your job. You obviously don't know how to do your job. Because it is blatant that of the bias and how you perceive and what you release and what you do, it's obvious bias. And I don't see how any of you can sit up here and allow this man to have, well, you know what, I do get it. Never mind.
We have Natasha Jones and Melina Abdullah and Michael Wilson.
Shortly after the shooting murder of Jesse Romero, this is what LAPD Deputy Chief Robert Arcos had to say to the LA Times. The tragedy of this event cannot be understated. In a community where violent crime continues to rise, particularly gang crime, this event underscores the need for youth programs and outreach, which could provide opportunities and alternatives for the youth of our community. I'll just read that again. This event, the death of Jesse Romero by the LAPD, underscores the need for youth programs and outreach.
So they can sexually
That's the focus. That's what your deputy chief had to say about this. That's what this event underscores to you guys. What this event underscores to everyone else is that you guys are still killing people. It underscores that you have murderous, irresponsible, ill-equipped, improperly trained police officers who don't know how to handle a 14-year-old suspected of gang-related graffiti or vandalism or whatever. Worst case scenario, he was, sure, let's say he was, I don't know, tagging, gang graffiti, whatever. then you kill him? That's step one, and then step two, you kill him. That's the kid's problem? If only he had a youth program to go to, maybe he wouldn't have been shot by police. This event does not underscore the need for youth programs. It underscores the need for all of you to look at yourselves and say, oh, we're not doing a very good job here. We're still killing kids. What could we have done, the police, the adults, the trained people responsible for keeping the community safe, what could we have done differently? Not, man, we should really invest in some youth programs so this kid wasn't out on the street. He was 14. This comment to me is baffling. It truly, truly is. And I would hope that you were personally embarrassed that your deputy chief, that's what he had to say about this.
Melina Abdullah.
Long time no see. I hope you all enjoyed your vacations over the last 2 weeks. I think that it's important that we acknowledge that there's a lot of game playing going on, the reordering of the agenda, putting items on the agenda at the last minute, the continued failure to or refusal to notify the families of those who are killed. When we brought it up months ago and you said that would be corrected, families continue to rely on organizations like Black Lives Matter to even know that their items are on the agenda. Matt Johnson, I think that all of that needs to be raised. So over the last couple of days, we've been trying to make sure that the community knew that the killings of Jesse Romero, murders of Jesse Romero and Kenny Watkins were on the agenda, because you sure don't publicize it. And as I was tweeting things like LAPD is the most murderous law enforcement unit in the country, and LAPD abuses and kills our children. And as I was sending those tweets, I stepped back and I said, that's a lot. Is that really true? Like, I even baffled myself. And then I looked and I said, 6 teenagers were not killed overall in LAPD history. 6 teenagers were killed last year by LAPD. And so we can point the finger at Charlie Beck and say that you are the most murderous police chief on this earth. You are. And you need to go, and the life of a white woman is not more important than the life of our children. So you need to go, you need to resign, but we know that you won't, because you are entrenched in white supremacy. You are entrenched in patriarchy, and no one is demanding anything different from you, and that's your job. That's your job. Your jobs as parents, as the oversight body for this police force, is to fire him. You are continuing to allow the murder of our children. Do you not see this? Do you not see that Jesse Romero is 14 years old? My daughter is 13. You are all parents. How can you allow this to be? You just are in his pocket? You're not going to do anything? And Baba Keely raised, we already know the outcome. We already know you're going to go into this little side room and you're going to rule the death of teenagers in policy.
Okay,
Be more courageous than that.
Michael Wilson.
I'm going to say this real direct to all of y'all sitting on this bench. Number one, in policy is not putting your hands on civilians while they're walking. What attack was I committing? What crime what was I proposing? In your face, on television. But I'm the aggressor, right? But I would be arrested if I put my hands on him, right? Defending myself as a human being, right? In your face, right? in your home. I'm so glad that the world is watching this evil-ass LAPD chief and all his cronies destroy humanity. You claim to protect and serve, you protect your interests and you serve your pockets, and you let little 15-year-old girls, daughters, children be targeted while criminalizing the community. Who's the real criminal? Because that little girl wanted to be an officer. She had all high hopes for the humanity of the LAPD. And guess what? Y'all showed you don't have humanity. Y'all destroyed this little girl. Her hopes and her dreams, you destroyed. Y'all sit here and y'all vote this in compliance, this death. Y'all are to protect the community from the murders and rapes. Right now, I'm fighting the case right now because all of a sudden these gangsters are the main cause of the murders and the rapes specifically. But guess what? We're here to say LAPD is the cause of the murders and the rapes. Damn, it's crazy when you look in the mirror of you and you see no longer an officer, you see a monster. Show me what you're protecting. Show me what you're serving. Show me what you care about. Where's your humanity at? Where's that little girl's future now because of the LAPD? Where's Jesse's future now because of the LAPD? The people are watching, the world watching. Guess what? LAPD, you on the wrong side of justice. That's right. And the world know. The people know. And we ain't going for it. Let him put his hands on me again.
Thank you. We have no other cards for item 6A1. We do have 6 cards for item 6A2. We have Michael Williams, Jan Williams, Melina Abdullah.
So Kenny Watkins was killed during a traffic stop. During a traffic stop. He was just going to college. He just got into college. Y'all taking our kids' futures from us. Y'all taking what the best and brightest of us. Y'all taking them away for little stuff. For things that white teenagers get slaps on the wrist for. And you just, it says in the report, they don't even know why he shot at him. The officer, they didn't know what prompted him to shoot at Kenny Watkins. Because he's black and getting out of the car? And then magically 2 handguns show up? Right. After he gets shot? Y'all killing our kids, the people who are supposed to make our communities better. How can you make the community better when you're killing off the youth? When you're killing off the very people who we put our faith, our dreams, our hopes in? How can we get a return on investment? How can parents look at their kids and say, hey, you were successful when you kill them? With no remorse. You guys won't even fire this fool, let alone hold the officers that killed these people accountable. But you know what? I'm talking to the police commission. I know you all. We've been here before. I sat here with Jose Mendez's mom when y'all found that in policy. I sat here with Crave Bursey's family when you found that in policy. I sat here with Waukesha Wilson's family when you found that in policy. And I know y'all gonna find this in policy again. So keep doing it, because the community, like everybody keeps saying, the community is watching. And this community doesn't take kindly to their children being killed.
Jan Williams.
So the problem is the policies. The problem is that we have criminals writing these reports. That's the problem. This is not a problem, Becky, that we can solve by cutting our hair. It's the culture of LAPD preying on our community. It's the culture that my son, my 14-year-old, will tell me when he don't feel like doing his homework, the police gonna kill me anyway. As a mother, what could that make you feel like? To hear my son, a 14-year-old, saying the police gonna kill me anyway. That's what they see. The criminals are writing the reports. When the criminal is also investigating the report, and then the criminals are saying we did nothing wrong here. The problem is the policy. This is the body that is supposed to be changing those policies, and y'all ain't doing shit about it. So what's the point of y'all being here? What needs to happen is this whole body needs to be dismantled. Y'all sitting here doing the job of these fuckers along the walls and saying it's okay to kill people. When and why is that ever okay? Jesse Romero was 14 years old. He didn't even make it to high school. And y'all gonna sit here and say it's okay to kill Jesse because this fucker was scared? Because he was in fear for his life? Why is the policy okay for somebody? How can you police somebody's emotion? And I'm in fear for my life. I'm in fear for all of our lives. Every time we see the police, I'm in fear for my life. Who's going to fight for me? When you take off that uniform, then who are you?
Thank you.
Who are you when you take off that uniform?
The next speaker, Melina Abdullah, followed by Paula Miner, Nia Amina.
So we're considering Kenny Watkins now, right?
Correct.
So I want to ask you, Matt Johnson, did you reach out to Kenny Watkins' family? You committed to doing that. Who was here when Matt Johnson committed to starting to reach out to the families when their loved ones are on the agenda? Who was here for that commitment? Did you reach out to the family?
Our family liaison unit absolutely did.
No, they did not.
They did.
Jesse Romero's family, did anybody reach out to you other than us?
You said you were.
Carlos Montez, speaking for Jesse Romero's family, who reached out to you?
Nobody. We did.
You all are lying. The family liaison doesn't do shit. We are the family liaisons. We reached out to the families. We don't have the phone numbers for Kenny Watkins' mother. It's changed. So what I want to urge you to do is take this item off of the agenda until you make sure the family is here to speak for Kenny Watkins. The family is not here. We reached out to the lawyer. That's all the contact we have. You have their number. They should be here. Is Kenny Watkins' family here? Because nobody reached out to them. How could you possibly rule on the murder of a teenager, rule on the murder of an athlete, a scholar athlete, rule on the murder of somebody who is a community member and beloved by his family and his community without the presence of his family? That's ridiculous, and you have the power to change that agenda. And I want to demand, do we demand? Yes. We demand that you not consider this item until his family has been contacted. Did you confirm that his family has been contacted?
I know as it sounds like you know that the family changed their number, the family liaison unit.
So then you know how to get in touch with his damn family.
If you want to hear my response, then give me the decency of letting me respond. We have the contact information for his lawyer, and we reached out to the family's lawyer and let them know. They wouldn't even confirm whether or not they were going to let the family know. So we did everything.
Your job is to reach out to the family. The family liaison shows up at the house all the damn time. You know where she lives. You know where Sister Precious lives?
I'm very comfortable
So
that
you
we did
need to
everything
reach
we
out to
could
the
to let the
family
family
and
know.
postpone this item until the family has been reached. This item must be postponed until the family has been reached. You made that commitment.
There are
This is
statute of
inhumane.
limitation issues. We're not postponing the item.
You don't have a statute of limitation issue.
Call the next
There is no
speaker.
We know you have
Ms.
3
Abdullah,
years, homie.
Ms. Abdullah,
You have 3
please have a
years. You have 3 years.
Not have 3 years.
You
Please
do have 3
seat.
years for charges to be filed. You think I haven't researched this shit?
That's a district attorney issue, not a police commission
Okay,
issue.
so then you need to give it another week until you contact
Ms.
the
Abdullah,
family. This
please
is
have a
inhumane.
seat. We're gonna move on to the next speaker.
You made a commitment. I'm not moving. And I don't give a fuck about getting arrested. You already know. Somebody pick up my kids, right, Jan? I'm not moving until there's a commitment for Kenny Watkins' family to be contacted. You cannot consider an item.
Ms. Abdullah, if you
made
will not have a
commitment
seat,
and you. I'm
then
not
going to
sitting
go
down.
we're going to go into closed
I
session
don't-
right now.
Who's going to stand up with me? Who thinks it should be that the family is required to be contacted when their loved one is agendized? The family, Matt Johnson would want this for his children if his children were killed by police, but they never will because they're honorary white people, right?
Right.
He would want that for his children. Would you want that for your children? Would you want that? What if your family hadn't been contacted? You want that for your children?
Ain't nobody want to hurt them. Ain't nobody wasting charge.
So you're gonna surround the room and go into closed session because you refuse to contact the family? Contact
If
the
everyone
family.
can please have a seat.
Contact the family. Contact the family.
Okay, we need to clear the room. Please have a seat so we can continue the meeting. Please have a seat so we can continue the meeting.
And we are the criminals. We are the criminals when he keeps killing teenagers. And y'all refuse to even
Okay,
be humane and
if we cannot have a seat, if everybody in this room cannot have a seat, we'll be forced to adjourn the meeting.
Tell your goons to sit down.
What difference does
Tell
it
your
make?
goons to sit down.
Your statute of
Please
limitations
have a
does
seat.
not run out next
Tell your
week.
goons to
No.
sit down, man.
Hell no. Hell no.
Tell your goons to get out of our
Get
face.
in touch with the mother. How could you decide whether or
your
not
last
the killing
man,
of a
'cause
teenager
you're a
is
punk-ass
impolicy?
bitch.
You haven't even
Okay, this is the last warning. If everybody does not have a seat, we're going to adjourn to closed session.
What last? I find that man. I find that man.
We're going to adjourn to closed session now. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 6A1 and 6A2 in accordance to Government Code 54957. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. The Executive Director will report out.
As to item 6A1, case number 053-16, officer involved shooting. Tactics, 1 police officer, 2 in policy, 1 police officer, 2 administrative disapproval. Drawing and exhibiting, 2 police officer, 2s in policy. Lethal use of force, 1 police officer, 2 in policy. Vote was 3-1. Commissioner McLean Hill voted no. The other 2 votes were unanimous. As relates to item 6A2, officer involved shooting 055-16. Tactics, 1 police officer, 2 + 2. Tactical debrief, unanimous. Drawing and exhibiting, 1 police officer, 2 + 2 in policy, unanimous. Lethal use of force, 1 police officer, 2 + 2 in policy, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. We begin now on consent agenda items.
No,
I believe.
we finished the consent agenda items. We're on item 3.
Regular
Can you
agenda.
explain what administrative disapproval is, at least for the people? What is that? I mean, you're using language that many people don't understand. What is it?
It means that if the officer's actions were in policy, they're found in policy. If they're found out of policy, it's administrative disapproval. It's either one or the other. So we're going to move to item 3A, please.
Yes, item number 3A, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the efforts to increase the deployment of patrol personnel.
So who's going to tell Kenny Watkins' family now?
Mr. Khan, can you please stop disrupting the meeting?
So do you have a plan, man, to let Kenny Watkins' family know? They did already.
In policy? So they came back super quick and said, Jesse and Kenny.
Okay, can we have order, please? We are now on agenda item 3A. Mr. Khan?
She voted out of policy for Romero.
It's administrative disapproval. So they're saying it's...
Mr. Khan, if you continue to disrupt the meeting, I'm going to ask you to leave.
That's okay, you can ask you to leave. So what happened? Because they lied.
Ms. Abdullah, you're disrupting the meeting.
Administrative disapproval.
You're disrupting justice.
You're fucking killing people. Really?
That part.
Let's go on to item 3A, please.
So he's saying one is
Okay, Mr. Khan and Ms. Abdullah, if you want to have a conversation about, please take it outside the room. This is the last warning for both of you.
Kept us outside for having food and water in our bag.
Ms. Abdullah, you're disrupting the meeting. Please, this is your last warning.
Oh, no, the warning, Cash. Look out! The warning's coming. The warning is coming.
Statute of limitations that you're bound by, there's no such thing. You're on record.
You're incorrect about that. Ms. Abdullah, I've given you multiple warnings. I'm now asking you to leave the room.
And my answer is no.
Nobody's leaving.
If you're not going to leave the room, then I'm going to have to clear the room for everybody.
We don't give a fuck. You already ruled
killing
that the
everybody out
killing
there.
of teenagers is in policy. Why do we care about you clearing a room? Why do we care about you clearing a room?
Ms. Abdullah, are you going to leave on your own?
Does anybody in here care about him clearing a room?
Okay.
Give a damn about you clearing a room.
I'm asking the room to be cleared, please.
Lying about reaching out to the family of Kenny Watkins, right? Isn't that
Stand up as a man, Matt Johnson.
Quit
looking for approval. Leave the room. You're a man. Leave the room.
I brought it down here because I was watching.
Man up.
I was watching this on the live stream, and where
She wouldn't leave.
they're not
I told her she had to leave. She wouldn't leave, so then we quit. I'm not going to have her dragged down.
Can we have Department Civilian personnel please exit to the hallway?
Run away, because that's what you've already That's all right, because if you're not gonna discipline the officers, if you're not gonna discipline the vet, you know, if you're not gonna hold people accountable, we will hold you accountable. Matt Johnson, Shane Goldsmith, Sandra Figueroa, and Cynthia McLean.
Mr.
We
Johnson.
will hold you accountable.
Matt Johnson.
We will hold you accountable. They killed, right.
Ms. McLean here. What happened? President Matt Johnson. Mr. Johnson. Hello. What happened with the liaison program? It's supposed to be in honor of Waukesha Wilson's memory, so that this doesn't happen no other time. It happened to me without me being notified of my daughter being killed. What happened? What happened? And
You're asked to leave the room at this time. Please leave the room.
What the hell is going on?
I am Lieutenant Caldera, police officer for the city of Los Angeles. I hereby declare this an unlawful assembly, and in the name of the people of the state of California, command all those at 100 West Police Commission Boardroom to immediately disperse, which means break up this assembly. If you do not do so, you may be arrested or subject to other police action. Other police action may include the use of less lethal munitions, which could cause significant risk of injury for those who remain. Section 409 of the Penal Code prohibits remaining present at any unlawful assembly. If you remain within the area which is best described regardless of your response to remaining, you will be in violation of 409. The following routes of dispersal are available: the rear door, through the lobby to First Street. You have 15 minutes to disperse. Start the timer.
It's like y'all surprised that people are angry when you kill people and then you get away with it. It's like y'all shocked at that. Like that surprises y'all. It's not surprising that people are feeling some type of way, anger about their kids being killed. What's wrong with y'all? That's a natural human response. To be upset when you were told that your child the police have the right to kill your child for getting out of a car.
This is an act of civil disobedience against a police commission that does nothing. Police killing unarmed black, brown youth. It's murder. And they call it in policy. It's bullshit. We are in civil disobedience.
You have never even surround us. So listen, one of the things that I think we should be real clear on is that the police commissioners are complicit, right? So they try to play them off as our civilian body that's providing oversight, and they try to play it off on individual police officers and even possibly Charlie Beck. But we have to remember they just rubber stamped the killing of a 14-year-old and an 18-year-old, right? Every single one of them needs to be held accountable. Every single one of them needs to be held accountable. The president, Matt Johnson, Cynthia McLean Hill, who tries to play the nice cop. Remember, good cop, bad cop, they still cops, right?
Right.
Sandra Figueroa, the one who's silent all the time. Shane Goldsmith, who tries to play herself off as a white progressive, right? This is not progressive, right? When they are killing people and rubber stamping it, they wouldn't even give us any semblance of humanity. What we asked for is for them to please not issue the ruling on Kenny Watkins because they have not notified the family. They didn't notify Jesse Romero's family either. Everybody heard Jesse Romero's family say that Black Lives Matter notified them. The police liaison program that they're funding did not notify a single family. Did they notify you? No. We called you, right?
Black Lives Matter called me.
And so we're saying every single police commissioner, and at the top of the food chain, we got to remember who appointed all of these commissioners. Garcetti, who thinks he's going to run for president, who appointed the most murderous police chief in the history of, in the nation, not gonna let them kill and rape and abuse our babies and there's no cost. Am I right? Right. All right,
Can I ask you a
how are we
question,
gonna
ma'am?
hold them accountable?
Can I ask you a question, ma'am? You said civilian oversight and leadership. The word civilian implies people of the gods. Are these people of the gods? What gods do they serve?
God
Not
said it.
my God.
That's the God
Not
they
my
serve.
God. So we need to be holding. Yes, we want to fire Charlie Beck. Yes. Fire Charlie Beck.
Fire Charlie Beck!
How about arrest
Fire Charlie Beck!
How about arrest
Fire Charlie Beck!
How about we
And
arrest Charlie Beck?
and we want to we want to get rid of every single one of these state commissioners who does not speak on behalf of the people. They are rubber stamps for a police state that sees black people and brown people, even black children and brown children with targets on our backs, and they excuse it. They just ruled the killings in policy. Think about what that means and contrast that with what they did with Justine Damon out in Minneapolis, right? Her lawyer called her the most innocent victim ever. I think children are the most innocent victims. How about that? How about that? How about we get some justice for Jesse Romero? How about we get some justice for Kenny Watkins and all of our folks who are just as worthy of justice as the innocent white woman in Minneapolis.
That's right.
And if they're not murdering people, they come close to murdering people. Pedro Echeverria,
Yes.
18-year-old young man, 6 days before his 18th birthday, shot 4 times at his spleen, his abdomen, his liver. He's fighting for his life. That is in policy as well. Mass amount of rape of young women, of cadets, sodomizing young boys. That is in policy as well. A long history of institutional and cultural violence. All of that is in policy.
Yes.
And all of these people are complicit. They're all the agents of violence. They're the ones who are out there on the streets. It's a predatory department. It's a predatory institution.
And the prostitutes y'all make deals with. Instead of taking her to jail.
She doesn't want to say, can we just say something about you? So she doesn't want to say anything, but I just want to say, and we just want to offer a prayer for Sister Lisa, whose daughter Waukesha Wilson was killed by LAPD, and how inspired we are by you, that, you know, a lot of families go home after their own cases. And not you. Thank you. Yes. So we want to say thank you to you. We want to say thank you to our ancestors. We pray that the ancestors and the creators surround, guide, and protect you, that Waukesha's spirit continues to drive you to be such a force for us, for all of us. And may we all be used for the good of our people, for justice, for freedom, and for those whose names we call.
That policy was created, designed, and is interpreted to protect and defend the police, not the people. And so every time they have to make a decision, it's going to always be in favor of them. We know now. We've seen this play over and over and over again. Because the policy was created, it's designed, and it's interpreted to defend them, not us, and certainly not children. We saw this with Devin Brown 11 years ago. We saw what happened. And we have seen it time and time ever since. You know, police are bordering on infallible unless they kill a white woman. then they got yeah. But short of that, they are infallible, and they have to be infallible so that they can criminalize, control, and suppress black and brown people. Because if they're not infallible and they do that, then mistakes gonna be made, and clearly they don't make mistakes. The killing of these young people was not a mistake; it was in policy after all. Yeah.
And intentional.
Yeah. Well, and we can go back year after year and talk about the policy. Everything is always in policy, no matter what. Right. What's the policy? Right. Well, the policy is you can kill him. The policy you can kill him. It doesn't say that in those words, but it gets interpreted that way.
They should change over here. It says murder by policy. All of this.
Alright.
Pues yo nada más quiero decir que pues, estaba aquí, estaba una persona y ahorita va a llegar y yo siento mucho que ellos tomen una drástica decisión cuando llegan a agarrarlos y matarlos. So, ellos nomás dicen sorry. Ahora ellos se dieron cuenta que a mi hijo le dieron 17 balazos en la cabeza y el policía que lo mató fue Andrew de la Torre. Él ya estaba tirado, mi hijo muerto, ya estaba muerto y le disparó toda su pistola. Y no quieren que uno les haga nada a ellos, pero ellos sí quieren hacerle a los hijos de uno. Mi hijo no era pandillero, mi hijo no era falta de respeto, mi hijo era un muchacho cariñoso. So, ellos nada más lo pararon por una equivocación y él era pasajero, ni tan siquiera él estaba manejando. Y al último, nomás le dispararon por la cabeza, 4 balazos, cayó y el policía dijo, nah, y 17 le dio. Toda su pistola le descargó allí. So, ¿qué quieren que uno piense de ellos? Son racistas. Son gente que no tiene sentimientos, que no tiene corazón. Porque hasta un agarra a sus hijos, los defiende. ¿Y ustedes qué son entonces? Son unas llenas, porque no tienen corazón para los seres humanos. Yo le doy gracias a Dios que los perdone, porque yo no puedo perdonar a las personas que mataron a mi hijo. Y se llama Sandy Gardner y Andrew de la Torre. Malditos sean para siempre, los odio. Mi hijo es Edwin Rodríguez. When we were in front of City Hall. No, Jesse Romero. Yes. No, but you came last year. Yes. Yes. And
You know,
Heads up, we're at 2:30.
You wrote it. Okay, look. It says the young people, the cadet, will become whole people. for poor people. That's a total lie. The people will be under the control of LAPD who have done all these killings. You don't become a whole person that way. A whole person is a person that has compassion, humanity. That's a whole person. Not a person that goes and kills because the person is a different color or you think he's a criminal. That's murder. That's racism. I'm a human rights activist. Human rights activist.
We got to turn up on this damn police commission. So let's say that it's time to turn up on the police commission. It's time to turn to that follow the mayor. It's more than a demand to fire Charlie Beck. He needs to get out too. And every appointee he has. Anybody want to sum sort of
Everybody, you must leave the room at this point. If you do not, you're subject to arrest. We cannot continue until you leave the room. Then the meeting will resume after everybody leaves, and then you'll be allowed back in. But if you do not leave, you will not be allowed back into the room.
Yeah, it's not a meeting if there's nobody in here. You're violating the Brown Act again.
So that we're clear, you're saying we have to leave, and then we come back in, and then we come back in?
Yep.
So the purpose of us walking out and walking back in is just so that you can assert your power.
Yes.
Right? Because there's
Yes.
actually come back in.
So that you can
pretend that you're more civil than you are? Is that the reason?
Just so that we can walk back in.
All right, it's time to go.
So you don't have a response. Why is that?
But
Why don't you have a
do we come
response?
back in?
Yeah, just come back in. If you don't leave now, you can't.
But if they start the meeting before the people come back
They're
in,
not.
you're
They're waiting for you to
violating
leave.
the Brown Act.
They're waiting for
That
you to
doesn't
leave.
make no sense. Will they wait till we come back?
Everybody stay in a group.
Hey, now, just to the public here at LAPD headquarters, there was
You gotta get the cameras up for those that are gonna get arrested.
they're saying this meeting is we resumed, and everyone has to walk out, and then everyone can walk back in, and the walking out and the walking in.
Is we have to leave the room. I can't be arrested. Up on parole, and then
SPLCenter.org, Southern Poverty Law Center.org, because this is neo-KKK, neo-Nazism under Trump. Go into SPLCenter.org. There's a lot of white supremacist, racist organizations that elected Trump.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We'll find out.
Lieutenant?
How far do you think we're gonna get, guys? How far do you think we're gonna get? Maybe about 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
What's that? Sorry.
You know me already, right? I'm gonna be.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
They all walked out, so they have to come back to the scanner. They told them to stay in the lobby so they could just come back in, but they all left. Now they gotta go back to the scanners. All right, let's just hear if you want to talk to them about your phone. You all good? No, it hasn't fixed yet, but I can. Okay, okay.
No, they got too much on the line.
Hey, thanks, everybody. I appreciate everybody cooperating. Appreciate everybody cooperating. I know.
Could we do that on at least on that?
Yeah. So I told you, a minute to 30 seconds, they know. As soon as the TV cameras are here. Yeah, they're already connected.
We're actually going to have them.
I'm just thinking,
it's kind of humid, so. Yes, he's my person. I hear the line, I was like, yes. That's a hill.
That's right.
Because they're all coming through security. Should be. Yeah.
He interviewed me for something,
Yeah, they're coming in.
I'm not gonna stay. I was just gonna walk.
No. Well,
If you need me.
Yeah, I met him.
Well, tomorrow there'll be a Senate of the actually get him, well, it's more important for Mayor's office. Yes, yes, yes. I want to get Paul tried to go. He was trading all my things that we gave him.
South LA. South Street, because I would say it's lost.
So they have something as long as that impact officers more liberty. Just like their issues.
I want to say Long Beach Boulevard.
Oh, okay.
But on
Things that he does are absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The east side. Yeah.
Lawrence area.
Oh, okay.
Possibly looking at
He grew up as born and raised people. I'll go off there. Like I'm not.
It's fine. Right.
I know.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mr. Moore. May I speak to him? Great.
Around everything.
How are you doing? I'm going to remain seated. Keep answering. Family Johnson, the people of California in your presence. Are you aware of what that means, sir? Well, the Constitution you swore to uphold makes me the sovereign in this state. Let's just talk about
We've got
that.
such a beautiful home here. You go to Christmas.
We don't do, they have a big home. Oh, we don't. No,
Calling back and never do and never investigate a case. That's called deliberately slow walking, obstruction of justice, just like Martin Luther King.
The Board of Police Commissioners meeting is now in session. And we're in item number 3A, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the efforts to increase the deployment of patrol personnel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm George Villegas from the Office of Administrative Services, and trying to bring us up to speed briefly on some of the efforts to increase patrol personnel, officers in operations. And essentially, one of the first things that we did is we essentially put processes in place to manage the attrition out of the Office of Operations. And in so doing, in the last 3 DPs, we've been able to increase deployment by about 80 officers. So that's one of the things that we're doing. We're also identified, the Office of Operation identified what optimal staffing is in operations, and we're working towards a goal to have full staffing in that, towards those numbers in Office of Operations. Part of what we're doing is that we're doing a managed attrition. We've looked at Office of Administrative Services, Office of Special Operations, and the other offices and divisions, and we're in the process of identifying the numbers of potential officers and detectives that can be returned or reassigned, rather, to the Office of Operations. That process is in the meet and confer process, so we began it, and we need to continue on with that process to identify those officers, make notification, and then eventually transfer personnel to those positions. The Office of Operations itself is taking a look at its own operation within and realigning and reassigning personnel. There's a 3-phase process that they're going to engage in to ensure that they reallocate their personnel to be specifically assigned to a patrol function. The first is that they're going to be looking at the elimination of the parole compliance units. That's about 84 fixed post positions that they'll be able to realign. Currently, it's about 69 officers or so that are going to be reassigned back out into patrol. The next is also a meet and confer item. It's taking a look at the officers that are assigned to narcotics enforcement details and reassigning them to patrol. They're looking at the bureau units in terms of civilianizing. We have officers that are assigned to the bureaus that specifically look at crime and or cameras in terms of doing audits and inspections. We're in the process of trying to civilianize those positions. That's probably about 11 of them that will be able to reassign back out into patrol.
What's the process for civilianizing those positions, and then will we be able to get them filled by civilians?
Well, that's part of the budget process that we went through this year, was to identify those positions that we have officers assigned that could be done by civilians. We then requested those in the budget. They were approved for this fiscal year, so we're in the process of conducting the backgrounds and hiring and those things. So we believe that we'll be able to move those 11 people back out into the field. The next phase within the Office of Operations is identifying the team's coordinators, subpoena control officers, and court liaison officers. And hopefully by being able to replace those in the next budget cycle with civilian employees, we'll be able to get more officers back into the field. Overall, in this year's civilian hiring plan, we have 78 positions that we will be transferring within the department and making those positions civilian positions so that we can get officers back out into operations. And then lastly is jail division or custody services division. We currently have 43 officers assigned. We have 57 officers assigned. 14 are fixed post positions that will remain. Of those 57, 43 positions will be filled by detention officers after hiring this within this fiscal year. We're hopeful that by deployment period 12, we'll have all 43 back out into the field. Questions?
Can you also identify the front desk?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. And then we're looking at the closure of front desks, and I don't have the number. 16 of the 21 front desks will likely be closed. We're looking at from about 1800 hours or 6 p.m. until the next morning, and that should free up a number of officers to go back out into patrol as well.
You identify, Commissioners, that then about 48 officers will allow us to realign those from front desk services. And these are areas that don't have jails, so we recognize the impact on public service at midnight or 1 a.m. Ability to have a front desk service. However, we'll maintain front desk services throughout the city in a more regional fashion. And we're one of the last today that run individual desk operations in as many locations as we do. So we believe that while it's regrettable, priority first is a full staffing field force. So that is not, those closures are keep the agency conversation. We want to bring that up because we're in the planning stages now to provide phone services as well as answering services at our front desk. So we're not doing this move yet. However, we will anticipate the next 60 to 90 days in that direction.
Thank you.
I just want to say I understand that the implementation of some of the things that you're exploring are in the meet and confer process, so that will add some time to some of this. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I also just wanted to point out that I know that the department, both Chief Villegas and Chief Moore, have been working very, very, very hard to address a situation that has been a significant challenge, and I just appreciate your efforts.
Very good. Thank you very much. Do we have any comment on this item?
We have one public comment. We have Christine Gadsden. Christine Gatson. She's not here.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to item 3B.
Item number 3B, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the use and access to the CalGang database.
Good morning. I'm sorry, good afternoon. Joining me today is Lieutenant Steve Embrich. He's the officer in charge of the Gang Support Section at GND. It's Captain Stephen Carmona, C-A-R-M-O-N-A. Let me just start by saying that CalGang cannot serve as a direct evidence of a gang affiliation. I'm going to go through an overview on the CalGang system and hopefully alleviate some of the misconceptions. CalGangs is a standalone system. The information contained in that database does not feed into any outside databases. It's more of a pointer system that indicates the location of source documents. The data is held under the right to know and the need to know. So you need to be a law enforcement agent with a legitimate law enforcement purpose. And CalGangs is not used for any of the following: employment applications or background, military, housing, medical benefits, non-criminal immigration proceedings, or entrance to college. It was designed as an investigative pointer tool, and it directs officers to original source documents that can be based on evidence regarding gang affiliation. And those document types can be field interview cards, arrest reports, crime reports, incident reports, gang registration, jail classifications, and any other miscellaneous type documents. I'm sorry? CalGang is an automatic web-based system. It shares intelligence on criminal street gangs, documented gang members, and documented associates and affiliates. Now, to add a new gang member into CalGang system, there's two criteria must be met. There's an exception where one criteria will suffice, and that is during a jail classification interview at a detention facility. Now, gang member criteria is as follows: self-admission, reliable source, gang dress and attire, frequenting a gang area, gang hand signals or signs, associates with a gang, untested informant information, gang tattoos, and arrested gang-related crime. Now, the criteria identified as from a reliable source can be a parent, a teacher, a reliable informant, another admitted gang member, a judge, a law enforcement officer, or parole or probation officer. Now, this database is guided by the Code of Federal Regulations, Title 28, Part 23, which provides oversight on databases. Every 5 years or within 5 years, the CalGang system is purged. If there hasn't been gang-related entry, the person is purged from the system. There's several reasons that the information in CalGangs is kept confidential. Confidentiality protects the privacy of the persons, the entities, and associations who the information is contained in that system. And the system is routinely audited. Integrity and accuracy of the data is critical, and under no circumstances shall printouts from the system be released to the news media or representatives of the news media. And the gang lists generally are not printed out. There are occasions where a court will issue a court order for a gang list, and we have an administrator will appear in court and present that off camera to a judge. Several success stories on CalGangs. I won't go into them unless you have specific questions, but I would also like to add that the audit from a year ago has been looked at. The department has made corrections on just about every issue that was brought up. There's currently a department order draft that's with Policy and Procedures Division right now, and once that is signed off and put in place, then we should be up and running in full compliance with all of the issues that were identified in the audit. And I might also add that we have not had an entry into the CalGang system, a new entry this year since January, and that's when AB 2298 took effect with the new procedures.
Can you talk a little bit about the process if someone disagrees whether their inclusion on the database, how they get removed from the database, and the process of letting people know that they're included in the database in the first place?
Absolutely. We have a system that's, in fact, pretty thorough. What was previously used primarily for juveniles is now used for adults and juveniles. That prior to be entered into the system, they will be served with a letter, or they'll be notified 30 days in advance, and they have an opportunity to contest that. There is a form that asks several questions, and let me go into some of those so I can be thorough. And several responsibilities that that fall upon a department. So primarily, the gang enforcement officer is going to look at the field interview cards, arrest reports, and that once it's decided that this person met the criteria for inclusion on the Cal gangs, it goes to a supervisor. That supervisor approves it. The lieutenant approves that after reviewing all the materials, and a letter is sent out to the person that's going to be entered. There is a procedure to contest that, and that is a letter sent to our department. Our department does research, lists the reasons for the gang membership, or the reasons why it doesn't fit, and responds. The ultimate appeal is with the Superior Court.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to add, last year, as you know, the California legislature passed AB 2298. As a result of that, it created a 186.34 and 186.35. And in order to be in compliance with that, the department created new procedures, which we are currently in the process of. It's currently in the department review process. And we anticipate within the next several months, we're going to publish that policy for the entire department. And like Captain Carmona mentioned, it's going to include a policy in which somebody can contest their entry into the criminal database system. The first step of that review will be with the gang, the lieutenant who's in charge of the gang impact team for that specific area. If the person is unsatisfied with the finding of that review, the next step would be to go to the Superior Court. And it's a real affordable process. It only costs the person who wants to petition $10.
Great.
How would the public know about these policies and procedures?
I think the media has given it a great deal of coverage, and I believe that once the policy is published, it will again gather media attention. And I think on our part, I will put out some press release once the order is out and these new policies are.
Do you mean with respect to when someone's included? Don't they get a letter?
They get a letter. Oh, prior to them being entered into the CalGang database, they're going to get a letter from the department.
And that letter also tells them what they can do to contest.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, is there any general, for instance, if I'm just citizen A, because lots of letters come, and you know, things get discarded or lost or whatever. So if I just wanted to know more about the Cal database, and you know, if I had frequently asked questions, etc., how is there some public place that I can learn what my rights are? Let's say, you know, I'm an aunt, not a parent, so I didn't get the letter, but I'm concerned about my nephew or my niece, and I want to be helpful. Is there a way that the public is informed about how this works?
Yes, ma'am. Once our department policy is finalized, we intend to, you know, publicly announce it. In addition to that, at every police station, we're going to make a public posting. So we're going to have a sign at every front desk, which includes instructions on how people can ask for instructions. So number one in our policy is we're going to allow persons to to post an inquiry, they can fill out in writing a form, or we're also working out a procedure where their attorney can, on their behalf, request to find out if they're actually in the criminal gang database, in CalGang. And we're also building into that system controls so that we can protect people's privacy, so somebody else can't just walk in and ask about somebody's information they're not entitled to. So I hope that answered your question.
Commissioners, we're also working with the city attorney's office and also the mayor's office of gang reduction youth development. Both those offices have public-facing information and will
provide, so we're working with the city attorney's office and the gang reduction youth development of the mayor's office to provide the public with information as well. And then, of course, community advocate groups, many are part of the GRID organization, can also seek information, and will provide that information.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you.
Does that policy come before the commissioner, or that's done at the department level?
I'm sorry, ma'am, can you repeat the question?
The policy to comply with the new California law, does that come before the commission, or is that done at the department level?
I believe it's done at the department level.
Certainly, commissioners, we can bring it back before you for review. So we will.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comment on this item?
We have 4 public comment cards. We have Audrey George, Carlin Moore, a card that says People of California, and Ariana Alcaraz. Is Audrey George here? Carlin Moore?
Yes. I had another card mailed regarding the gang issue.
This is the gang issue.
Oh, but I have
You're only allowed 1 card per item.
well, per item, but then I have.
You have one for another item.
My name is Carla Moore. I can't hear. Turn on mic. Is it on? It is on.
Sir?
He needs to kind of move to something.
Volume, I can't hear it.
We can hear her fine, and sir, can you please stop disrupting? Is that mic definitely on?
Sure. Doesn't sound like it.
Hello?
Tap it one time. Show me it's on.
Commissioner President, you have the switch there.
Thanks for not disrupting your own meeting.
Okay, my name is Carlin Moore. I'm a gang expert, okay? I was a gang expert for the Sheriff's Department. I represent over 300 victims of crime, mostly gunshot victims. And I'm not hearing anything of interest to me right now, because the problem in this city with gangs is not being solved. I see Michael Moore. Hello, sir. I've called your office before. The problem that we're having and why the gangs are going to continue is because you have officers, especially in Newton and 77th. When they see a young man walking down the street, they will ask them, they will just roll up on them, and I've seen it many times, what gang you're from. You know, what's your gang name? You got any tattoos? Raise your shirt up, we're looking for guns. Well, I've rolled up on them a couple of times and had them to stop that. So we cannot solve the gang problem here in Los Angeles unless the officers stop doing that. Everybody's not a gang because they look like it. And that is a serious problem for 25 years that I've been doing this. I was a speaker when Parks was voted out regarding the same thing. I have 32, I'm going to say it again like I did back when Parks was voted out. I have 32 uninvestigated shootings right now between 3 police stations that were never investigated. I am part of LA Clear with Detective Mike Lorenz, who was 77, now he's at Olympic. Nobody's addressing those to this day. To this day. So I'm listening to stuff that's not making sense to me. Because like I said, I'm going to share something that I have never shared. My brother was killed by law enforcement. I was 15 and pregnant in 1970, by 77. In 25 years, I never bring that up because I never wanted officers to say, oh, well, you're retaliating. No, I'm not. My brother was murdered for a reason. And that's something I also want to share with a lot of people that's here with police-involved shootings. You don't know what caused, a lot of times, police officers to shoot and kill.
Royce?
And I must say that because of my brother. and we were very, very, very close. But the issue here that I want everybody to hear is out of 300 gunshot victims with my name on them through the Victims of Crime program, 32 were never investigated. Officers need to stop stopping people for no reason. Just stopping them. You're aggravating the situation. This problem's never going to go away. Sheriff McDonald and Sherman, when he was the sheriff, I'm only using that as an example. Every case that I've had with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department from 1992 to present has been a conviction or arrest.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker, Carlin Moore. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
No.
Different issue.
No, and when we get to that issue, you'll be called again. Thank
The
you.
next speaker, People of California.
Have to be removed to help you, huh? You're welcome for the microphone. Oh, thank you? She did say thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm glad to be thanked. The people of California are here. We are on a 2-minute clock, so obviously I can't tell you everything I want to tell you in 2 minutes. You have a management principle in this department called people helping people. I prefer to think of it as criminals helping criminals. There is a gang called Venice 13, which runs a open-air drug and stolen bike market on the boardwalk. The LAPD's Pacific Division helps them do it. So by your own criteria, the LAPD fits into the Cal Gang database. I want every one of your names in there as of now. The people of California have spoken. You are ordered to show cause in this moment why you should not do so. Thank you very much for your acceptance of the ruling of this court. Now, frequenting a gang area, who determines what a gang area is? I would say it would be this headquarters. Biggest gang in the city. You all wear the same colors. That's gang attire. I said it. That's an informant. Okay, you're all on the list. Good luck getting off. Now, you're not going to cure the gang problem because you're working with the gang problem, aren't you, Mr. Moore? If you're part of that chain of command, you're covering it up for him. I arrested a fucking bike thief who stole my bike, or at least received stolen property and admitted it to me. Your officers allowed an ongoing riot to occur, myself to be assaulted with the cane I'm not allowed to bring in this room. And what has happened? Is that officer off the streets? No, sir, he is not. Because no good deed goes unpunished and no bad deed goes unrewarded. Captain Nicole Alberca failed to the level of her incompetence. I'd suppose she's your immediate underling now.
Ariana Alcaraz.
Hello. So I just wanted to come off of Cynthia's point around how the public can get access to the information on how to appeal, their name being in the database. And I think that you all need to put that information on your website, and it needs to go on all public agencies in the county, and that information needs to be accessible very easily, not just through your press releases and whatever you think, in some letter that you're going to send. Oftentimes people are on that list and wrongly put on that list, and so they need to have access to that information without having to jump through all kinds of loops, and you're just adding more barriers to that information, so it needs to go onto your website and in other ways.
That will certainly be on the website.
And there are no other comment cards on this item.
Okay, thank you.
We're now on item number 3C, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the impact of federal immigration enforcement on the reporting of crime and victim/witness cooperation with investigations.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm going to provide the Department's verbal report on this matter. I'm joined today by Chief Arcos in the room, who's been spearheading many of our efforts with our Hispanic communities that are been largely impacted by concerns relative to federal immigration enforcement. Earlier this year, as you're aware, the Department noted a rather dramatic reduction in the number of Hispanic victims reporting spousal assault crimes, and particularly sexual assault crimes, in comparison to other ethnic groups. As a reminder, those stats were spousal assaults by the end of February while the city had seen a 7% reduction overall, Hispanic victims were down 10%, and 69% of the overall reduction was centered within Hispanic victims. Sexual assault crimes were even more dramatic. By March 18th, we had seen an overall 12% reduction in sexual assault crimes in the city. However, Hispanic victims reporting sexual assaults were down 25%. So these numbers draw our attention as they raise a very serious concern that members of our immigrant communities were possibly not calling the police for fear that they or their members of their family would be deported. Chief Beck raised this issue very publicly and also instructed us to ensure our outreach efforts were intensified. In response, the department did amplify its outreach efforts to its communities, particularly our Hispanic communities, with the assurance that a person's immigration status was not a police matter. Since that time, we've continued our outreach meetings with community groups, houses of faith, neighborhood groups, immigration right advocates, and others to stress the importance of encouraging all of our communities to work with their local police officers. To date, more than 150 specific meetings have been held. We've also utilized our social media platform as well as every other opportunity to reinforce our message, whether it be by the chief's message. We've also enjoyed conversations and focus by our elected officials, including members of this board. We've developed a series of frequently asked questions that have been published in May, both in English and Spanish, and available online. And as we come to the end of the summer, we've been working with LA Unified School District to kind of change gears and move more towards back to school nights and open house events. In that, what we're hearing from the community is that they're aware, they're mindful of this, and we've seen some drop off actually in interest in some of these community events. So what we want to do is change gears, recognizing that many of the parents and family members of students oftentimes can't come to these meetings because they're working, they're otherwise occupied. So we want to use those open houses and parent nights as a means of being there, not just for matters of immigration and address concerns that are very real, that parents or family members may be subject to immigration enforcement actions by simply calling the police for a crime, and assure them that that is absolutely not our policy and in direct opposition to what we will do, that we're going to safeguard their safety. The results so far we're cautiously optimistic, or it's promising. What I mean by that is in looking at spousal abuse assaults cases at the mid-year point, overall they're down about 2% in the city, and our Hispanic victims are down 3%. So the numbers have come much more in line with what the overall reduction is. This is also seen in sexual assault crimes, where overall sexual assault crimes in the city as the end of June 30th are down 7% overall, and in the city, Hispanic victims are down 9%. So they're still, but they are still drafting a little heavier than the underlying numbers. This probably most certainly shows up in total Part 1 crimes. So property and violent crimes, citywide, as you know, we ended June up 2% as a city. However, our Hispanic victims, as being reported as being a victim of crime, were down 2.5%. So, and then lastly, our calls for service. We just spoke here about the increased workload and patrol efforts to augment our patrol because of that. Our call load is basically even this time, this year as it was last year. It has had a 13% increase over the last 3 years. But when we look at the 4 largest Hispanic population areas, we have 21 commands. The 4 that have the highest percentage of their population being Hispanic, 3 of those 4 have seen a reduction in call load. So not just a reduction in Part 1 crimes, but a reduction in call load. Those 4 areas, by the way, is Hollenbeck, Rampart, Newton, and Mission. So while basically citywide calls for service have remained the same, the largest decrease in call load has occurred in Hollenbeck area with a 10% reduction, followed by Rampart with a 7% reduction, and Newton with a 2% reduction. Only Missionary, which is located in the North Hills area of San Fernando Valley, has seen an increased call load of 2%. So going forward, we continue to utilize a variety of our communications channels to stress the importance of our immigration communities working with us, holding their trust and confidence that they and their families' immigration status is not a police matter. We believe our communication strategies are working, both from our elected officials, again from this board, as well as Chief Beck and the leadership team of LAPD. However, this will be a matter that we're going to continue to watch very closely because as the national dialogue is continuing, we think that it still has waves of impact on people and their willingness to rely upon a Los Angeles police officer for help and assistance. And we do also believe and know that there's a criminal element that will prey with misinformation that in fact calling us is calling an ICE or an immigration enforcement official that is effectively the same. So we're going to continue to counter that message, and we look forward to maintaining the trust in our communities, and of course we'll continue to update this commission as requested.
So the overall call load for the city is flat?
Yes.
So that
compared to that same time last year.
Same time last year. So what that likely means is that for every other population other than Hispanic, it's up because the Hispanic population is bringing it back down to flat. So it's,
yes.
So so it's probably actually a little bit more striking than comparing it just to the overall, which they're factored into for purposes of that average, given how large the Hispanic population is in our city.
Yes, the proportionality of it. Yes.
Well, I think the department.
And let me, if I could, just follow up to give you how we see that in Central Bureau and in South Bureau. We know, and you'll hear from my remarks shortly, we have an increase in violent crime. Yet call load in Central and South Bureau is down.
Right.
So it's call load in the central part of the city. This year versus last year is down 5.4%. In South Bureau, it's down 1.9%. And in Valley Bureau and West Bureau, it is, in contrast, it's up. It's up 2.5% and 3.3%. So again, these are very broad conversations. This is not tested. This is not scientific. We have not put the rigors of research on this. These are just observations, and we see these mileposts, and we want to ensure that our communications on all the various channels is persistent to overcome an aversion to reaching out to local law enforcement.
Yeah. I think we can't take for granted. I think we have to continue to get the message out, and saying it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, whether it's the department or city officials or this commission, every opportunity we have to continue to push that message out. Any other questions on this or comments on this item? Thank you for that. Do we have any public?
Yeah, just a quick question. I agree with Commissioner Johnson and just was curious about outreach with community-based media, and would want to encourage both that and outreach with community-based organizations, because I think that in the same way that people are kind of hearing through channels that we can't be trusted, it's important that they hear through channels that they find credible, that may not be us.
No,
that they
I
can
agree.
be.
We agree, and in fact, as the Commission's aware, our meetings with a number of immigrant advocate groups in regards to our current immigration policies, commonly known as Special Order 40, those meetings are ongoing, and a number of those, UCLA Law Center, National Day Laborers Organizations, and others are voices in those conversations, and also we believe that ACLU and others are partners with us in communicating fact versus fiction in regards to the role of LAPD.
Sure.
Chief, what about the media, television, press releases that go out to the Spanish language media?
So Mr. Rubenstein, as our Public Information Director, has strengthened our Spanish-speaking media capabilities, both in writing, in radio, and in television. And just as recently as yesterday, this was a topic of conversation at the Chief of Police Direct Report meeting with Chief Grimala and Chief Villegas and myself and Mr. Rubenstein as to what additional efforts. One of the challenges we have is as we produce public service announcements is they tend to go in where the media will allow them to be, which may be 4 a.m. And what we want to do is we want to, of course, get into more mainline evening, early afternoon, mid-morning type sessions where more eyeballs and ears are hearing on Spanish media channels. So I know that I spoke with Mr. Rubenstein this morning. I know he's meeting with Chief Gramala to explore some more of these ideas, and I'm hopeful that we'll see the role of mainline media recognizing that it has a responsibility to facilitate this messaging.
Thank you. Okay. We do have 4 comment cards. We have Gina DiPietro, Audrey George, Christine Gadsden, and Michael Williams. Gina DiPietro, not present. Audrey George, not present. Christine Gadsden, not present. Michael Williams.
How can y'all seriously sit up here and talk about that LAPD is an alternative for Latino people than ICE when y'all just ruled that killing a 14-year-old was in policy? When y'all ruled that killing a 16-year-old was in policy? How can y'all really sit up there and say that? How can y'all really sit up there and say that the LAPD is a good alternative to calling ICE when y'all sat up there and y'all heard what people from Boyle Heights community said about Hollenbeck, said about the numbers of people who've been killed by Hollenbeck just this year in their community? They talked about Pedro, who is in jail right now, who's in jail after you guys almost got him killed for no reason. So how can you really sit up there and say this is a better alternative to ICE when you do nothing to try to change your officers or try to change anything in that department in Hollenbeck? You literally do nothing. This commission does nothing to change any kind of policies that will make sure that Jesse Romero goes home to his family that night, that Jose Mendez goes home to his family that night. There's no policy changes here, and you guys are supposed to be the policy-making body of the LAPD. You're supposed to be the community's voice, and time after time you hear people from the community come here and express what they're feeling, no matter what, and they express it so eloquently and so clear about what is actually happening. The statistics back it up. The numbers of people that you guys killed backs that up. Yet you still sit here and do nothing, but yet you want Latino people to trust the LAPD when they're killing their children and getting away with it. How can y'all really sit up there and have a straight face and say that?
And we have no other comment cards on this item. We're now on item number 3H. Department's report dated July 14, 2017, relative to second follow-up report to the Blake Justice Consent Decree fiscal year 2015-2016 annual report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. George Villegas from Office of Administrative Services, and I have Police Administrator Vartan Yigian and Senior Personnel Analyst Cindy So. You asked us to do a follow-up with respect to a Hunter Law Lake consent decree report that was presented back in January of this year. This report is actually the response to some of the questions that were asked, and it includes an overview of the sworn selection process that was asked, and the demographics and the information, gender, ethnicity, with respect to the candidates that applied for those positions, and then we have the overall identified demographics of the identified coveted and limited tour assignments. What I thought I would do, though, before I open it up to questions, is kind of define for you what limited tour assignments are pursuant to our department manual. Limited tour assignment are considered to be training and or management development positions. Officers are assigned to these positions are encouraged to take appropriate promotional exams at the next scheduled update, and because their tour is limited to a certain period of time, then they'll be asked to move on to a different position, having received that training. A coveted position was presented as a result of the Hunter LA consent decree, and a coveted position are those department sworn police officer assignments likely to assist an officer in developing the insight and skills necessary to enhance a career path of promotability toward the command and staff ranks. Coveted positions are defined by the consent decree, and the limited tour assignments are defined by the department. So in some cases, you have a limited tour assignment that's also a coveted position.
Right.
The coveted positions is limited tour, but they're not necessarily mutually exclusive to one another.
So I think we can just jump right into questions if that's okay.
Yes.
So, and I'll just go in sort of order of the report, and thank you for the report. It was very thorough and answered a lot of the questions I had. So in terms of the examination process and under the selection process, the examination, who does the interviews and how are the interviewers selected?
Sir, the interviewers are selected by the hiring entities, and the hiring entities with their specialized subject matter experts are the ones that sit on the panel. And they are normally at a level above the level that's being interviewed, either supervise the position or a level above.
So if it's for a position in RHD, the interviewers come out of RHD?
Correct.
And they're at a level higher than, and so what is the senior ranking officer in that division making that decision?
Correct. Sir, for instance, if it's a P3 level, perhaps a sergeant or a lieutenant would sit on the panel.
Mm-hmm. I know that for certain positions, certainly as you get higher up in an organization, a lot of other agencies use all the interviews to take out the personality aspects that might exist or certain biases. That the interviews are actually done by third parties, and I know lots of our officers participate in those interviews for other agencies. Have we looked at that and thought about the pros and cons of having a system where those interviews are done by officers from outside agencies?
We actually do that, but I think we're talking about two different processes. The one is the pay grade advance process, which is the P2 to P3, the Sergeant 1 to Sergeant 2, the Lieutenant 1 to Lieutenant 2, and the D2 to D3. That's a pay grade advance process. There are so many of those that we do those internally as an organization. And in some cases, although they can be done within the chain of command, there are often times where outside, for lack of a better word, an outside raider within the organization fulfills the position within the selection board or the interview board. So that occurs quite often. And that specifically occurs when you have higher level positions. Now, as it relates to promotional exams, we use outside raters as part of that panel. So for example, for commander positions, deputy commander positions, and captain positions, we use outside raters. And so how does that work? Is it there? I know the outside raters. There's also inside raters though that are on those panels as well. Correct. So for example, and you can correct me because you're the expert. But if you can correct me, in the personnel department process for outside raters at the rank of captain and commander, we have generally one sworn employee that participates. Then you have a department personnel analyst from personnel department, and then you have an outside rater. So you have 3 different raters that are participating in that process. Mm-hmm. And have you looked at that compared to having a process where they're all outside, like personnel department and people from outside agencies? I don't believe that we formally have a project to look at it or to assess it. I can tell you without doing a process that it would be labor intensive, cumbersome in terms of time, and it would probably be cost prohibitive for us to look at. Are those outside raters paid? In some cases they are. I don't know what personnel department's position is on it.
They're paid by their organization. So for instance, if we send people out, our department would pay for their salary, same thing, vice versa.
Okay. So we have reciprocity with certain other agencies?
Yes, sir.
In the report, it says that every effort is made to make sure that there's gender and ethnic proper representation on the interview panels. Going through the different divisions, some in some places, we're more successful than others. How are we in those, and I know this is a shot in time, so it doesn't necessarily, is not necessarily representative of the next panel, but how are we enforcing that obligation to make sure that there is proper representation? And then there's certain of these areas where there isn't much diversity to begin with, so then how are we, how are you going to create a pool of people to look at that are diverse if the area isn't diverse to begin with, like motors, for example?
So that's a multi-pronged question. So let me try to address it if I can. I think that I don't believe that there's a formal process that we have in terms of auditing specifically every single position, every single interview panel. I know that as when I was the director of operations and when I was chief of the Valley, and I'm certain that in operations they're doing it now and have in the past, is have discussions with the deputy chiefs, the commanders, and the captains to ensure that there's a diverse process in place, inclusive of a diverse board. So the other process that occurs is when there's a recommendation made at the area or division level for a position of a pay grade advancement. It's then brought up forward to the bureau chief, who then makes a determination and or endorses the recommendation or counters that recommendation based on the personnel selection matrix. So you have, although that's not an audit mechanism, that isn't one layer above that reviews to make sure that it's in conformance.
But there, in the Commissioner, I just would add to that, there is a checklist, a review process. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I thought you weren't going to hit that.
So employee selection has a checklist that we review, and part of that checklist talks about how we can do to make sure that employee selection process is as equitable and as fair as possible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I assume in the selection process, the oral interview, how important is that compared to other factors?
Compared to other factors in terms
what are the other things that are evaluated beyond the oral?
Well, you have the interview, the interview, the content, and the quality of the discussion in the interview. You have the content and quality of the personnel file or
package,
the history. You have the comparison of what they're saying to what's in light of what's written in the performance evaluations.
Right.
And then you have the team's report or the personnel history that's looked at to balance out the strengths and weaknesses of the potential candidates.
Also on page 3, under selection, it talks about, as what Chief Villegas already mentioned, the department looks at disciplinary history and other factors. But during the interview, that's where there's a even playing field, because all the candidates are being interviewed, with sets of questions that assess their skill, knowledge, and ability needed to do the job without looking at any discrimination factor, like without looking at disciplinary history and other things, other factors. So it's straight into their skills, their knowledge, and ability needed to do the job.
Yeah, and the questions that are asked within the interviews are not selected by the panels. I mean, they have a series of questions that are actually provided to them by employee selection.
Yes, our unit develops job-related questions based on the validation studies that we create with the help of subject matter experts. And then with those questions, we give them a set of questions to ask so that they're not asking anything that would be deemed discriminatory.
Got it. So they can only ask the questions on the list.
Well, they have a choice of
Sure.
within that list.
Right.
Right. And there are follow-up questions that is set there as well.
Okay. That's good to know. In terms of demographics, so you mentioned that the coveted positions are defined, and that came out of the negotiations in the actual consent decree. So how long ago was that?
I don't have the exact date of the consent decree.
The consent decree?
It's been a while, right?
Hunter LeLay, I believe, is
15,
dated in 1988 or so. 5.
Like
And this is Blake Justice.
It goes
Yeah,
back
to Blake
even farther,
Justice.
73 or 74.
Blake
Wow.
Justice.
So has the department taken a look at whether the coveted positions as were negotiated at the time of that consent decree are still the right covet? Are there maybe additional positions that should be included in the definition of coveted position to get this higher level of scrutiny? You know, it was a much narrower group of positions than, frankly, I thought it would be before getting this report. I thought, you know, essentially, you know, a lot of the if someone has a phone or something, can you please shut that off? It was a more narrow list than I thought, and I think if you actually look at how the department does in terms of promoting diversity in coveted positions versus in these units generally, we do much better in the coveted positions, which have a more rigorous process. So I'm curious as to whether it's been looked at, whether that list of coveted positions should be expanded.
I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the coveted positions, the selection process is the same as it is for all pay grade advanced processes. So what we did years ago is adopt the coveted position, the coveted definition positions, and then the process that we engage in for the coveted positions, so they're inclusive of all of our positions now. So they all have the same process. There's no longer.
So that process is undertaken for positions beyond just the coveted positions then?
Yeah, all upgradable positions.
All upgrade. It is for all upgradable positions. Okay.
So there's no distinction in terms of process because we adopted that as a best practice years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner, the only thing I would add is that keeping them the same makes it easier to track progress on this because we have the same standards. So. Sure. But if we change them, then we won't know if we're doing better at it.
Yeah, I mean, my question wasn't really to just sort of is whether if you take out forget for a second the defined term coveted positions, right? And let's think about like these divisions are positions that are these different divisions, whether it's RHD or Metro or BOMS or CRD, are areas that a lot of officers in the department want to work. And if you look at the diversity in the coveted positions, we do a much better job of fulfilling the diversity goal than we do in the total population in those areas. So my question wasn't, the purpose of my comment was, do we need to expand that process so we're making sure that we are getting the best candidates in a really fair process for more positions?
Yeah, and well, we could look at that. I don't know that we do anything that different except for track them differently. You know, I think, you know, and everybody understands. I mean, all the commands are judged on their selections and their diversities, and the same way you judge me, same process. So, but we can look and see if there is something we do other than the annual report.
Well, the results are definitely different.
Yeah.
Let's talk about limited tour assignments for a second. I noticed in these areas there aren't very many positions that are limited tour assignments, and I know this is a bit of a hot button topic in the department, but essentially people get into these different areas, and they essentially become lifetime appointments, and there's a limited opportunity for there to be new individuals, new folks that would like to be in those areas to come in. The opportunity for the department to move someone out is pretty limited. It's something I think we need to look at. And what I would like to propose is that I set up a subgroup of the commission, myself and one other commissioner. I'll find out if any of my fellow commissioners are also interested in working on this with the department to see if in some of these areas more of these positions should be limited tour assignments so that there's an opportunity to reevaluate folks and see if they are in fact a good fit for the position and potentially open up positions for for some new blood to come in. So I'll leave it to you, Chief, who you would like me and any of my fellow commissioners who want to work on this to at least start having the conversation about this issue.
And of course, we'd be glad to. We have added various positions to limited terms, and as somebody who serves a limited term assignment,
everybody on this board
I
does.
agree with the occasional need to do that. So George, obviously, and Vartan will be your contact.
Thank you. Those were my questions. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any?
We have one, sir. We have General Dogan. General Dogan. This is 3H. 3H.
I think he wanted I.
3I. Okay.
Okay.
Then we have no comment cards.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on.
Is there okay. So we have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
We're now on 3I, Department's report dated July 28th, 2017, relative to the analysis of law enforcement / mental response models.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Did you want a verbal report, or do you want to go right to questions?
Verbal report would be great.
Okay. Lieutenant Brian Bixler, officer in charge of Crisis Response Support Section. With me is Detective 3 Charles Dempsey. He's the officer in charge of the Mental Evaluation Unit Training and Administrative Section.
Captain Steve Cremora, I'm acting for Captain Lee, who's on vacation.
Good afternoon. The Board of Police Commissioners asked us to look at an analysis of the various models used by law enforcement agencies when responding to persons in a mental health crisis across the country. After looking at them, and we have actually continually do this, we're actually a national learning site as designated by the Department of Justice, which means when agencies across the country want to learn about how to build a response model like we have or just explore models, they are referred to us by the Department of Justice. At times they are paid to come and visit us. Last week we had 2 visitors from Salt Lake City Unified Police Department, and in another week's time we're going to have Salt Lake City Police Department come and visit us as well to look at their programs, and we collaborate. When we do those, they don't just come to learn from us, but we learn from them. So we will actually ask them to present to us what their response model is, and we try to learn from them and try to develop our programs going forward in that vein. So we looked at it and we broke it down in the report to basically there are 2 intervention or response models. Actually 3. One is there's no specific model, and that is the great majority of police departments in the United States have no written policy or no response model for dealing with persons with a mental health crisis. Those that do fall into 2 main categories, that which is the Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT, or what's also called the Memphis model. And that requires officers who want to have this type of training to volunteer to go to their 40-hour school. They're designated as a CIT officer, and they will be dispatched by patrol. So it'll be designated much like we have a person who is a police rifle operator. They're designated by that, and they will be responding first to an incident where that's needed. Whereas these CIT officers, if they're available, they will be asked to respond first. And a lot of these are rural agencies. The CIT model, or Memphis model, as looked at by the federal government, says that you should have about 20% of your patrol force trained and available to respond. So it's just a police officer by themselves. A lot of time these agencies run one man, or what we would call an LCAR, to respond to those calls. The weaknesses we found about this is it tends to be, again, it's just that officer alone, and the Department of Justice has come down on agencies who don't hold that 20% and don't have follow the rules of the Memphis model. So we went beyond that and looked at what can we do to enhance that model. We started with CIT many years ago, and we came up with the co-responder model, which we've been doing since 1992. The co-response model, the main proponents of that would be Houston Police Department, ourselves, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Office, Tucson Police Department in Arizona, and more recently Santa Cruz Police Department among the smaller ones. A lot of these agencies will have only one clinician. We have approximately 48 clinicians. Our numbers are just much bigger. We deploy 17 co-deployed models on a daily basis, on a 24-hour basis. And even with that number, last year in 2016, there were approximately 33,000 calls that were coded as a mental health call. With only 2 units per bureau, it just becomes very, very hard to get those officers, and you specifically asked about first responders, to get those units to respond in a timely manner. If they're working a call in Pacific Division, a call comes out in Hollywood Division, most of us know what the commute time is to get from Pacific to Hollywood. It's just not tenable to have those officers respond as a first responder. I did speak to some of the agencies that would call themselves a first responder as a co-deployed unit, whereas if I was the police officer and Detective Dempsey was my clinician, we actually went to Houston and watched them how they operated. They're probably the second largest co-deployed model in the United States. I got to go on a ride along. I watched how they respond. Their MEU or mental health officers dress in a full uniform with a vest. They normally actually respond in LCAR tactics or one-person tactics in Houston. But when they get a violent mental health call, even though that unit gets dispatched, they will come and they will hold back and wait if that officer deems it's not safe for them to approach with a clinician. Now, if it's a life-threatening situation, they'll do just like our officers do. They will engage. But as far as getting in there and de-escalating, they will wait until a backup unit gets there, and they will all approach together, which is how we train our MEU officers. If you're in proximity and you can respond, you wait till that backup unit arrives, and you approach as tactically safe to do so. So those are some of the agencies. Locally, we have some agencies that will say they have a co-deployed unit and they are first responders. The area is much, much smaller. Pasadena, the square mileage they have to patrol is smaller than most of our patrol divisions, so they're in a closer proximity to be able to respond. But even so, even if they're dispatched, they will wait with their clinician holding back until they get a backup unit. If they deem and when they deem it safe to do so, they will approach. Many of the times, our officers, when we do get there first responding, our mental evaluation units or our SMART teams, is when we have a jumper. If there's a jumper and there's no potential of them to attack our officers, or it's in that position, we've had many times where our SMART teams have engaged them as a first responder and had very good success at talking those people out of that situation. So those are some of the models we looked at. Like I said, we continually try to see what other models are out there by going to national conferences, by speaking at national conferences, and by having those people come to us to figure out what to do. So hopefully there's any questions.
Yes, thank you. That was great. Appreciate you coming back with all the details on the different models and addressing the question about agencies that indicate they're using a first responder model and how that actually plays out in real life. And so you talked in the report about the difference between the training that, can you describe a little bit more that all of our officers go through, mental health training, compared to a much smaller percentage of officers in other departments, and kind of the key components of that training?
Absolutely. We call ours mental health intervention training because we didn't want to get locked into the CIT model, which has certain, like I said before. In all these other agencies, not all of them, many of them that run a true CIT model, they only accept volunteer officers into that 40-hour school. And that means that, that's who they train in that 40-hour school. They are termed now CIT officers, and that's who they will send to these calls first off. We have come to the determination that we don't want to have to deal with only 20%. We want to train everybody because a lot of our calls deal with this, and we don't want to have somebody, what I've heard a chief of police say, roll the dice on who's going to show up and handle your call. So we believe that we're going to train everybody, and as part of our police science leadership program, every police officer, once they've graduated the academy and they've had 11 months of field experience, they come back and take our 40-hour school. Those components include a big part of it all the way through all 40 hours is de-escalation, stigma reduction. We start off with stigma reduction. We end with NAMI, giving a presentation. Again, this could be your mom, your sister, your brother, and we really drive those two pieces home. And we stay away a lot from the traditional CIT, which was here's all the signs and symptoms and clinical diagnoses of paranoid schizophrenia. Because to a police officer, that's not what we're worried about, de-escalating that crisis at the time. So we don't need to go through a lot of that. So we removed a lot of that and put a lot more of the stigma reduction and crisis intervention and role playing to try and make sure we do that. So that's we have to date we've trained about 1,300 of our police officers. We are tracking crisis calls and who responds, and we're about 20% of the calls are now being responded to by people who've been trained in MHIT out of those calls. So, and we will continue tracking that number, and as we continue to train everybody, that number will just keep going up and up and up until we get to the point where almost every single call you go to, there's going to be an MHIT trained officer that will respond as a first responder. Detective Dempsey, who designed the training, do you have anything else, sir?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. We had a friend of mine whose daughter is bipolar, and it's one of those situations where it's a lifelong thing for these families. And he had recently a cutting incident, and he had had officers respond to his house before, and he noted this last response by these officers was, in his mind, a refreshing thing for him. The officers actually took the time to speak with him, offer him resources, provide a more compassionate response. And he actually authored a note back to us here at the department, and we provided it also to our trainers to demonstrate to them that we can make an empathetic response change in how we approach these calls for service.
That's great.
I've attended the training and sat in on the destigmatization portion of it and really appreciated the in-depth approach and could see that the officers were very, that their perspective was enhanced by doing the role plays and speaking to the people from NAMI, so I appreciate all that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
About when do you think roughly the entire force will be trained?
It's going to be we're going to chase that number,
right,
because
there's new people coming on.
There are new people coming on, but we're going to be, within 5 years, we'll be at most of our existing patrol force,
right,
and then rolling forward with our new P1s, we'll be continually trained.
And Commissioner, we've seen just in a year's time from last year about this time, we were about 11% response, so we're up to 20%. So we're training every other week, so the likelihood we'll reach an appreciable number within the next year and a half, where it'll be significant number of officers trained that we'll see that percentage dramatically jump. So I would say within a year and a half, we should see a significant difference.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I too have done the MEU training and found it to be just phenomenal. Two things. A, I am interested in the article authored by Detective Dempsey, so if somebody could get that to me, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, I'm interested in, and if we have some measurement or some way of evaluating the impact of the training in terms of not just the quality of it on the front end, it's very, very good, but as it relates to results in the field, do we have, or have we thought through how we might develop some way of determining whether or not it's having the kind of impact that we'd like to see it have?
Yes, ma'am. We started immediately after we started providing this training. We actually created a new checkbox in our database that codifies if that responding officer had been through the 40-hour school. So we're collecting that data now, and what we also collect is use of force rate data, and so I'd say it would probably take us another 6 months to a year to have a measurable data set to look at, and we'll be able to look at use of force rates for those who are MHIT trained versus those who are not. We're looking at having some of our clinicians and also folks from outside USC, other schools, of coming in and doing a verified study on the difference between an MHIT trained officer and those who have not received the training when they respond to calls for service involving a person with mental health. So we're building that system now so that we can then go back and look at that data, and that'll be forthcoming.
Okay, that's fantastic. It would also be interesting, although I don't know if it's possible, the kind of direct, sort of feedback that we receive from that particular family. I don't know how we might gather, information that's sort of qualitative from people who are encountering officers in the field, because I think that's also, it's that the data sets that we have that I understand you're correlating, I think those are important, but I also think that there's a great deal of value in sort of the qualitative pieces that may not show up in the data set in exactly the way that you describe it. It sounds like, I guess what's not frustrating, I think what we have to be mindful of is knowing what to do doesn't seem to be the challenge. It seems to be more of a scale issue as it relates to what the department is confronting
Yes.
over and against what we have to deploy in the manner in which we're deploying it. And I don't know what there is to do about that except to be mindful, to acknowledge, and for us to keep thinking strategically about how we, what things we can do to better close the gap as we continue to encounter this population in numbers that seem to be on the rise. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Any public comment on this item?
We have 5 public comment cards. We have Ariana Alcaraz, Christine Gadsden, General Dogan.
Okay, so I wanted to ask if there was any way, if we can get data around every time that the mental evaluation unit was called, as to if there were any citations or tickets given to that person. What we see, what we see in this report and what we see on the streets is a lot different. And the reason that we are so much against police officers being a part of any first responders team when somebody is going through a mental health crisis is that eventually that person will come out with further and being further criminalized, right? So they would get a ticket for any small thing that the officer could find on them at that moment. And so we feel like it's a contradiction in one way to act as if you're connecting people to resources, but then also further pushing them down into poverty by criminalizing them. And of course, I'm with LA Can, so we work, we are directly, our membership and people in our organization are people who are homeless, people who are poor living in downtown, and the reality is not what this officer described with his friend's family or whatever. That does not happen on the streets, and we don't see that. We've never seen even an officer be matched with a mental health professional to go out and respond to a mental health crisis. That's something we've never seen. And so it would be interesting for us, and we would like to know if we can get data around the mental evaluation units that have been deployed, and how, and any criminalization and any tickets or anything that was given with those, when those evaluation units were called out.
There was a report on that a couple of months ago, and those reports, are those reports on our website, Richard?
Yes, sir.
So there was a report that analyzed I think some of the questions that you're asking, that if you go on our website, you can probably find it. And if you can't find it, then call the commission and someone might be able to help direct you.
Okay, thanks.
Michael Williams.
So I have a question. Was this new mental health aimed policing done before or after you shot a man who just had a stick, a homeless man who just had a stick? Can I get an answer for that? That was back in, okay, let me help you out. That was back in like April. So was this program put in place when that happened? Okay, how about Angie Guzman? Was this in place when Angie Guzman was killed? That was about a year ago.
This program has been in place for quite a while, and we've been expanding it over the years. It's a partnership.
That's what I'm asking. What is the
and
expansion? What is the expansion for it? Because Ezell Ford, we have Ezell Ford, who had mental illness, was killed. We had Charlie Africa, mental illness, was killed. Angie Guzman, mental illness, was killed.
You're right. We have a huge mental illness problem in our country, in our city. In addition to this program, we've also had all of our officers go through mental health training.
I got that. I got that from the report. My question is, when was this implemented? Because if it's after these things, then I can give you a applaud. I can say, hey, good job, you get something. But if it's before, if we've been doing this before, and we're seeing that we're still seeing a high number of people who have mental illness being killed, then doesn't it mean that there needs to be more invested into this? Because this is the first time in a long time. I haven't been to the commission meeting as much as I used to, but this is the first time I've heard anything about expanding a mental illness. And I don't think we should be giving pats on the back or saying that we're doing something good when there's still people being killed who have mental illness.
Say amen, somebody.
I guess I'm not going to get my answer.
Christine Gadsden, is she present? Okay, General Dogan?
Yes, I have a copy for you. General Dogan, civil rights organizer with LA Ken. The report offered today still fails to answer the basic questions the community asked. Right from the outset, you have still failed to address why co-deployed units in the LAPD can't be first responders, and why at least trained officers are given the discretion to request assistance from the mental evaluation unit and SMART teams. Continues to amount to increased uses of force and deadly outcomes at the hands of LAPD. The report offers evidence of growing appraisals of the success of the mental evaluation unit achievement, not just in Los Angeles, but in departments across the nation. It goes as far as to talk about articles, research, and training materials that are in fact produced by LAPD officers, but presented as unbiased data. Right? This is both a conflict and contradiction, which intends to mislead the reader by presenting an inaccurate account of the realities faced by families of people living with mental illness. In fact, these families searching for professional assistance and compassion are often met with force and violence in the communities of colors. The degree of compassion and humanity which informs MEU policies and practices are swept aside and replaced with a hardly retreat towards officers and bullets. Based on the consequences offered by the department, there is nothing wrong with the ways in which LAPD polices with the mental illness. It wants us to believe that the continued loss of life for an estimated third of the people killed by LAPD annually simply a part of policing. Thankfully, that this is not the conclusion that the people came up with. Man, y'all need to fix the light in here. It's too damn dark.
The next speaker, people of California.
Thank you very much. So, I see you guys have a lot of ironic statements on the wall here. In air quotes, reverence for the law. Ha, ha, ha. Commitment to leadership? Where are you leading us, sir? Your cohort, Mr. Moore, was under arrest. He just fled the meeting. That's called fleeing the interview in Fargo terminology, isn't it? You're under arrest as well, Mr. Beck, for the crime of conspiracy against rights under color of authority. That's a federal felony, as well as the state version, which is civil rights violations, right? Or conspiracy against civil rights, I guess. Civil rights are not the rights I have. I have inalienable rights, which are given to me by God, not the state, not the city of LA. And the Magna Carta and every subsequent piece of just law since then acknowledges that. Unfortunately, you guys don't know anything about the common law. All you know is statute. Well, that's what's known as rulemaking. And under People versus Hurtado, there is no rulemaking which might ever take away the rights of the people of California. This is a commission, is it not? I ask you, which commission do the people of California cede their sovereignty to? There is no such commission, because in your government code you will find that the people of California are sovereign, and the word people is both singular and plural. I am here now. Mr. Johnson, is that? You used my name to invoke your authority earlier. Do me a favor. When I'm in this room, keep my name out your mouth. Now, we don't need air quotes against these things. What we need is straight English, upper and lower case, a capital C commitment to leadership with a period at the end of it, and a capital R, reverence for the law, with a period at the end of it. You will show your reverence for the law by submitting to a lawful, peaceful, nonviolent arrest later after this meeting, sir. Thank you very much. Oh, and as far as mental health, the T1 was the first Terminator. I think the one with the sword hands was the T1000. The stigma reduction, how about stigma elimination? How about stopping enforcing lodging and camping laws and oversized vehicle ordinances, which fly in the face of every constitution you've sworn to uphold? Thank you.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the department's report?
So moved.
That was all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're now on item number 4, report of the Chief of Police. Chief Beck.
Is he still Chief of Police? I thought he was impeached.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. No significant incidents to report. I have a report on crime that I will give you. I normally give the week ending and the prior week, but because we went late today, I have today's crime stats. I'll use those. Part 1 crime through today is at a 1.3% increase over last year. Violent crime at a 3.1%. Property less than 1%, 0.7%. Homicides, we are 3 over last year, 156 compared to 153. That is a 2% increase, a significant reduction from last week, so we believe that trend will continue. Number of victims shot in the city of Los Angeles for 2017 is 618 versus 615 last year at this time. That's a less than 1% increase, about a 0.5% increase. Fatal traffic collisions, as of last Thursday, we had 130 so far this year versus 134 last year. That's a slight reduction, 3%. Guns recovered. Los Angeles Police Department has taken 3,231 guns off the streets of Los Angeles so far this year. That is a 7% increase over last year and a 23% increase over our 5-year average. Gang crime, we are at a 6% decrease so far this year to date. In our bureaus, the quarters of the city that we police, the Part 1 crime is up in 2 bureaus, Central and South, and down in both Valley and West, although not by much, but down a little bit from last year. Traffic collisions, I talked about the fatalities already with the reduction in fatalities. We've also seen a reduction in driving under the influence in the city where it causes accidents by about 12%. Hit and runs, total about even with last year. 0.1% increase. Motor vehicle versus pedestrians, we've had an increase of 6.3%, but unfortunately that has resulted in a significant increase in fatalities, 72 versus 55 last year. That's a 30% increase, and one of the reasons that we focus on pedestrian violations and motor vehicles that violate pedestrians right away. Bicycle-involved traffic collisions are down, a total of 8.5%. Fatal bicycle accidents have been cut in half, but they're small in number, 5 versus 10 last year. Personnel statistics, we have 9,974 sworn personnel on payroll, 2,887 civilian personnel, just under 400 reserves, and 285 special volunteers, and about 2,200 cadets in the program. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comment on this item?
We have 7 comment cards. We have the Red Chief Hunt, who's not present. We have Audrey George, not present. Paula Miner, not present. Jamie Garcia, not present. Kai Utsumi, not present. Michael Williams, and People of California.
The decision today to find the killing of Kenny Watkins is an indictment on every black youth in Los Angeles. It means that you cannot make any kind of mistake when you're in a interaction with a police officer, else you will be killed and it will be found that it was okay. That is one of the biggest problems that we have among black youth, is that black youth cannot make mistakes. Else their life is in danger. And what this commission just did verified that. It verified that if you are a black youth in this city, that you cannot have any interaction with the police, else you will be killed. Yet you sit here and you say you want community policing. You want things to go back. You want police and community to have a relationship. But yet you stood when a young man who was going to college, on his way to college, just graduated high school, was enjoying his summer, and all he did was step out of a car. And that's justification for murdering a young man. That is something that is an indictment on every young black. And I hope my brother rides his bike all through LA. My father drives his car all through LA. And I hope and I pray every day that they don't encounter one of your officers. I pray that they don't encounter one of your officers when they might be having a bad day. Or they might be not in the best of moods. Or they might be rushing to go somewhere. Because they don't act every bit proper. They don't act every bit as a respectable Negro, they're dead on sight. That's what you just decided. That's what this decision just proved.
I see 2 minutes on the clock. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks to the extent that they need be done so. No objection heard, so ordered. All right, Mr. Beck, I was not done with your charges. Obstruction of justice by conspiracy. Lynching by conspiracy. Both felonies. Committed by your officers last, what night was that? Saturday? I believe it was. Pacific Division officers under your direct command. Because it is a chain from the top to the bottom. And you're all in the same links in the chain of criminality, apparently. How long has my phone number been on your desk waiting for a phone call back for the failure of your police to arrest folks on September 11th? Quite a while, hasn't it? I came to this building more than 3 months ago, didn't I? How many times have I made calls to the LAPD where I was supposed to get a call back for follow-up that never came? How many internal affairs investigations have I asked for that have been concluded with, say, Officer, now Mr. Roberts, walking home to find a new job or going to jail for the crime of felony riot accessory? Or failure to, I don't know, criminal contempt, I guess is what we'll call it. Failure to take an order from the people of California in a life-threatening situation, which I am lucky to have survived. But the fact is, you know, not everyone is Batman. Not everyone's going to kick your ass for talking shit to them and, resisting arrest with force. But I am. Okay? Next time some woman punches me in the jaw and I have to put her in a chokehold, which by all your standards I think is well within my rights to make a lawful arrest, if I get arrested for battery and then she gets freed and I get arrested by someone who is technically under arrest still, how is that a lawful arrest? No, that's your officer lynching someone and putting her back in the community. A drunk driver who I arrested for throwing litter, a open container of alcohol, out of the car at me after just breaching the peace and, threatening a bicyclist with her 6,000 or 7,000 pound RV vehicle.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Okay. We have no other comments on this item. We're now on item number 5, public comment. We have 12 comment cards. We have Carlin Moore. We have Boris, the Red Chief, and Prentice Jenkins. Carlin Moore, please.
The reason I'm here today is because of the situation with Newton Police Station. I'm going to try to make it real brief. I know the chief's aware of this. It has to do with 3 crime reports that I filed with Newton against 3 attorneys, and they lied, and they said that they sent it to the Justice Integrity Unit for investigation. I went through internal affairs on, there's a number of officers involved. All lies. The Justice Integrity Unit, Jamie Garrison said, no, they never did. I've been through 2 years of hell and back, okay? I'm here to announce $1 million lawsuit against Newton Street and the city. That is what I'm here for, and my godfather is Reverend Cecil L. Murray, and he is assisting me with counsel, because my whole life has been turned over. There's been days I didn't even want to even wake up anymore, because I went through so many different officers, and they just lied, so many tape-recorded statements, and they just lied. And there's nobody helping me. You know, Carlin Moore is making this up. And what I would like is Internal Affairs has a standard form after they do an investigation that said unfounded. That word unfounded, it's a standard letter, and they need to stop it. Okay, Captain George Rodriguez, who's no longer there, I got a letter from him 3 weeks ago from Newton stating that it's unfounded. How could it be? He's not even there anymore. So my thing is this. We need to figure out where the ball was dropped, and I want every officer that's involved in this conspiracy and the lies removed from duty. And that's all I have to say.
Get on that.
Does anyone make a comment to me or say something back to me? Oh, by the way, Mr. Johnson, I tried to reach out to you. I know you've got messages for me. I spoke to Mr. Beck's office, and I just want to thank Mr. Beck, by the way, because he does have Detective Chavez addressing this issue. But I still have to do what I have to do, because I have a $10,000 psychiatric bill where I paid $200 an hour behind this. 3 times I almost ended my life. Wow. And Detective Chavez can testify to that because of emails that I left him, and he had people come to where he thought I lived. So they have to be made responsible. I went through hell with all of the detectives on this, you know, I lost an eye behind this, and I did what people do. You file crime reports. They also addressed, Mr. Beck did not know, Chief Beck, they also said that, please, sir, that there's a statute problem. Well, guess what? No one officer at Newton failed to call the FBI. I asked them, I said, is the FBI law enforcement?
Okay,
You said it's a
thank
statute.
you. I'll talk to Mr. T. Fank about this. Thank you.
Please.
I will.
But
Thank
there
you.
is I am filing a claim this week.
Okay, thank you.
The next 4 speakers, DA, not present. Kayutsumi, not present. Nia Amina Minor, not present. Miss Angela de Jesus.
On June 26, 2017, Officer Mario Cardona was found guilty in a federal court in a civil suit. A federal jury agreed that Officer Cardona was guilty of excessive force and acted with malice, and was ordered to pay $210,000. Officer Cardona attacked my son in my front yard. I've resided in my home for over 20 years. My son, Daniel Garza, was attacked and tortured for over 20 minutes. The LAPD Internal Affairs investigation found Officer Cardona's actions to be justified, lawful, and proper. Officer Cardona was exonerated and since then has been promoted. There was valid evidence to prove that Officer Cardona's actions were brutal and unlawful. A 14-minute video, witness statements, a 27-page explanation from a judge in Norwalk who issued a 3-year restraining order against Officer Cardona, an industry sheriff's report. All evidence was provided to the LAPD Internal Affairs, and it was all ignored, as if nothing wrong had happened. Since Officer Cardona has been found guilty in a federal court, the LAPD cannot have it both ways and ignore the reality that Officer Cardona is guilty. Officer Cardona's commanding officer admitted in federal court that Officer Cardona acted unreasonable, unprofessional, and used excessive force and acted with malice. An official complaint will be submitted. Officer Cardona should have been disciplined or discharged and not promoted. My family has had to endure this injustice, and Officer Cardona has been found guilty in this matter, needs to be addressed accordingly and not swept under the rug. Please Google Daniel Garza versus the City of Los Angeles and read the Jasmine Canick article, and it will help you to better understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next four speakers, Kwasi Nkrumah, not present. Christine Gatson, not present. Michael Williams, followed by Lisa Hines.
Again, you guys found that Jesse Marrero was his death was in policy. And I know there's complications with that case. And I know, they said he had a gun. They all do, right? I know they say he was a known gang member without any proof. His family doesn't think so. I think his family knows him better than your officers. But you found Jesse Marrero in policy, his death in policy, which basically means that 14-year-olds are fair game for the LAPD. 14-year-olds it's okay to kill a 14-year-old. As long as he has he was like involved in gangs, And again, it goes back to the narrative that black and brown kids can't make mistakes. They can't be kids. They can't do things that kids do, make stupid decisions. Right. No, police explorers can't either. Because police explorers get raped. And that's the narrative that is being put out, is that black and brown kids can't make mistakes. You can't be a kid. You can't do things that kids do. And that's what you guys found, and that's what you guys okayed, is that a 14-year-old is okay to kill. It's okay to kill a 14-year-old. And when we look, and the thing that startles me is that you guys think it's okay. You guys think it's all right. You think it's normal. You think it's normal for police to kill people. That is your norm. That is what you think is okay. When we look across the world, when we look across even our own country, we see that what's going on in Los Angeles is not the norm. You guys don't just lead the United States in just killing of people in small areas. You lead New York. You're beating out Chicago. You're beating out Baltimore.
Thank you for your comments.
You're beating out all these other cities that are big, just like here, and have a higher crime problem.
Thank you for your comments.
And yet you're still killing more people than those police departments. Why do you guys think this is okay? Why do you guys think that it's all right? That there is no alternative to then killing someone in the police department? Why do you guys think it's okay?
Poor training.
Thank you. The final speaker, Lisa Hines.
I have a card in, I believe, ma'am. Public comment? People in California put in a card for public comment. Please add one.
I just want to know, what is the liaison program about? I thought it was to notify the parents or the family of the people who get killed involving the police.
That is one of the things that the Family Liaison Program is doing, yes.
Well, how come they're not doing that?
Don't believe everything you hear
I'm not
in the
doing,
audience.
but I know this for a fact. I know this.
Well, we have different
It's not
facts.
happening.
So you're calling Jesse
And
Marrero's family a liar?
I thought it was in, I thought this happened, this program came about so that when none like what happened to me with my daughter Waukesha Wilson when she was killed, I wasn't notified. I had to search and find out where she was and what happened to her. I thought this was because of her that this program came about. But I haven't heard anything about it. I ain't even talking to you, Mr. Johnson. Beck, I need you to answer that. Can you? No?
No, because he doesn't know what the 22 minutes of video is.
Oh, Waukesha's tape?
Right.
Okay.
That is either the 22 minutes of the So of course he can't answer.
Can nobody answer that?
No, they don't answer good questions.
So when I was told that my daughter, the liaison program was going to be in memory of Waukesha Wilson, that was a lie? Anybody? I guess it was because I haven't heard anything more about it. I guess that was because the case was, out there. It was a high-profile case then, but I'm not going away. I am not going away because I was told that. You know I was told that. Charlie Beck, you know that her name was going to be supposed to be attached to the police department. And one of the commissioners said, no, don't do that, because if you do that, then you're defeating the purpose. So,
Ms. Hines, I'm happy to talk to you about this. We were supposed to meet this morning at 8:30. I was here, but I guess you were not able to make it. I'm happy to reschedule again with Mr. Tiefenk, and we can talk about this or whatever else you'd like to talk about.
okay. But I'm just like, Charlie Beck, he know about it, and he can't say anything to me. From the day my daughter was killed, the day I found out she was dead in his police department, he hasn't said a word to me, other than he know for a fact that there wasn't an altercation between her and the officer, which that was a lie.
How would you know that? How could you possibly?
Well, we already. You haven't said a word to me. That's all you do is sit there with a blank stare.
Ms. Hines, we have to move on to the next item. Again, I'm happy to talk with you.
Matt Johnson, you know what? Y'all say y'all want to do better with the public. It's not gonna get no better, because every time you turn around, the police department, the commissioners, they are lying to the public. They're saying one thing and doing something different. Now, come on, you want the public to do better? Come halfway and, to come together, build a bridge or something. You guys got to come more than halfway, because you guys do all the initiating. You don't de-escalate at all. That program is gone out the window.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
We have one final comment card from People of California.
I'm so sorry for your loss, ma'am. I wish you would have said that to her. But the people of California speak for you. You don't speak for them, because you're no longer chief of police. Once you're impeached, you're now Mr. Beck, not Charlie, chief of police Beck. So let's take a look at what we have here. Service to our communities. Well, we see what kind of service we provide. Respect for the people. Respect for the people. Excuse me, ma'am. I waited for your time, and I do support you. I love you, ma'am. Could we just freeze the clock for a second? All right. I understand totally. Thank you so much for your help, Mr. Johnson. In any event, respect for people. That's sort of like the way you respect people by people helping people, isn't it? When was the last time people helped people when I showed up at the Pacific Division? I mean, really helped me. Like, did what I asked you to do. Investigate your own fucking officer. It doesn't happen. I call the sheriff, he says, call you. I call you, you tell me to call them. They call me. I got a chain of assholes who don't ever take responsibility for anything. There's eagles in this world, sir, and there are ducks. Which do you think you are? You've been ducking my calls for months. Was there some day you were going to call me back? You think we were going to settle up sometime between you and me and figure out how we were going to honor the Constitution and the law in this city? Or was that just an afterthought? Is that more PR and bullshit? Ironic statements with air quotes around them. Reverence for the law. People who revere the law don't run away from arrest. Have I ever run away from an arrest? I don't think I have. You could check your records. I don't go to court when some jackass like Jimmy Hahn is sitting up there violating every oath he ever swore to. A guy who should have been impeached and arrested for the things he did in the city attorney's office, but as one attorney who caught him in these acts and busted him apparently said, he got him fired. I pointed out he got him promoted. He became mayor and now Supreme or Superior Court judge. Of course, none of our superior courts are superior. They are inferior tribunals created by statutes. The only superior court is a court of record, and this is one of them.
Okay,
Sir,
thank
your
you for your
indictment
comments,
has
sir.
been served in a public...
Thank you for your comments.
There are no other public comment cards. The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 6B in accordance with Government Code 54957. Okay. The Board of Police Commissioners has concluded its work in closed session. We are back in open session. In closed session, item number 6B was discussed. Mr. President, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gina Ray, and this is my dog Whippet. We're from Winnetka. Get it, girl. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. This is our city and our channel.
Fade and die away. Well, unfortunately, some of them do, but a lot of them end up in wonderful museums, aviation museums around the world, like this spectacular museum in Torrance, California. And I'm sitting in what kind of aircraft?
Northrop F-5.
And this incredible plane could go how many miles an hour?
1.5 times the speed of sound, about 1,000 miles an hour.